Start in about 5 minutes. There's a motor vehicle accident on 301 that some folks are tied up in to get here. So we're just going to postpone just about 5 minutes. Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the King George County Board of Supervisors, February 20th meeting.
I also would like to call to order the Board of Directors for the Service Authority.
Can we please stand for the invocation by Mr. Davis, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance?
Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to come before you, and we pray for wisdom. We pray for patience with each other. Dear God, we pray that you just move in this place today. Just help us to make wise decisions when it comes to this county. We appreciate you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Are there any amendments to the King George Board of Supervisors?
Yes, there is, Mr. Chair. Could I please recommend 0224 to be brought before the Board of Directors for the Service Authority? And that's the proclamation for multiple sclerosis. Yeah, I think I got that right.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anything else?
Nope, there's just something for the Board of Directors.
Okay. Would you like to amend that?
Yep, I'm just double checking where to put it. I would like to add to our agenda at the end of the Service Authority report from Bowden. I'm good.
Yes, ma'am. Alrighty. Public comments. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes per person. In order to afford everyone the opportunity to speak, please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly included in the public record. First we'll have is Ms. Level. Please come forward. You shall be heard.
Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo. I live in Presidential Lakes. Tonight, I want to thank you for your service to the community, but I also want to ask you to try really hard to fix the service authority. There have been so many people over the years that have tried to fix it with a little success. I don't understand why in July 2003, the supervisors had invested over $20 million into infrastructure improvements in the water and the wastewater systems throughout the county. I wonder if they ever paid back any of that $20 million over the last 20 years. When they started collecting taxes on cigarettes, they say it will go to Service Authority, but I don't know where the money went. Also, people of King George County, they've been asking to pay for both water and the debt, and they don't know where the money is going. Having to pay this debt is like giving the county a gift. It is going to the Service Authority, this debt, or I don't know. The Service Authority has a debt of $40 million in the county, and over $120 million is our financial condition improving or not. I know you will try to do your best for the county. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Level. Next would be the Reverend Davis.
Yes, my name is Pastor Davis, Sherman Davis from here in King George, 10640 Kings Highway. I'm here with my own agenda. I want to be able to read some scripture. I'm going to try to get preachers in our county to come to the meetings each month and just read a verse of scripture in the meetings. Try to encourage folks about the things of God and help your minds be centered on those things too. The Bible says in 1 Timothy chapter number 3, I exhort therefore that first of all, supplications, prayers, and intercessions and giving of thanks be made for all men, for kings and for all that in authority, and that we may lead a quiet and peaceable life in all godliness and honesty. For this is good and acceptable in the sight of God, our Savior, who will have all men to be saved and to come unto the knowledge of the truth. For there is one God and one mediator between God and man, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself a ransom for all to be testified of in due time. I was in a school board meeting last week and was going to speak there, and some of the children, teenagers, and the teacher, they hollered out, the separation of church and state, separation of church and state. And so after the meeting was over, I asked them, did they understand what separation of church and state meant? And of course they didn't. They think it's in the Constitution, and it isn't. I was very bothered because it seems like our teachers are teaching our children in school Separation of church and states means that Christians lose their citizenship. They're not allowed to speak anymore. When I become a Christian now, all of a sudden, and God's been kicked out, expelled out of school, out of government, out of everything that's in our workplace. And Christians many times are afraid to say anything because they're afraid they'll be marked as troublemakers or whatever. So I'm going to try to encourage preachers in our county to come each month, read a verse of scripture, have a word of prayer twice a month, because separation of church and state simply means that we don't have a state church. The state doesn't run the church. Separation of church and state means the state keeps their nose out of the church's business. But everybody in the church is a citizen. We don't lose our citizenship. And we ought to be able to talk about things of God in this meeting. I mean, what better place to have the mind and the wisdom of the Lord and the decisions you have to make for our county? What better place to talk about the Word of God? What better place to seek the wisdom of God? What we're going to do. And so I'm just encouraged to try to encourage other pastors to keep folks from living in fear. And it's freedom for religion, not freedom from religion. And so I care about souls. I care about people of our county. So I just want to encourage our ministers in our county. Those who are not afraid to do so. Ministers are scared too. They're scared to speak up. And so I want to encourage them. And hopefully each time we have a session, I'll be able to, or somebody will be able to read a verse of scripture and encourage you about the things of God. They all said, amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Davis. Next will be Calvin Butch Norris, please.
Thank you, Board, for allowing me. It's time to speak. I'd like to call your attention to an action item tonight, 02-27, presented by the Director of the Economic Development and Tourism Department on the expansion of the parking lot at Wilmot Landing, which is on Wilmot Road in King George, which is where I live. Back in the early 90s, this area was turned into a landing for the public of King George County to use to land their watercraft, to enjoy and to fish from. I was on the original committee that helped develop that site, do the research. Not only that, that committee traveled up and down the Rappahannock River by river and land looking for other potential sites to develop water use activities for the citizens of King George County. The county owns roughly maybe 3/4 of an acre at this site. The rest of it is surrounded by U.S. Fish and Wildlife property. When we originally met and designed that area, the best that I can recollect and recall, we put in the notes that there would not be any expansion to this parking area, to this area whatsoever. It is rural, it is unpaved, undeveloped. It is history on both sides of where this landing is. One side is the brick kilns where a factory was that produced bricks in King George County, probably one of the first industries here. On the other side is some low wetland areas. On a hilltop was a hotel that stood there, along with the Wilmot Post Office, which now has been sacredly buried by time. There's no place to expand this parking lot, much less allow more traffic than it currently uses it to go up and down the road. At any given time, it is used by more non-King George County citizens than it is King George County citizens. Just last year, I met a vehicle on the road while I was coming down there with my tractor and hay baler on a curve, had to stop. This vehicle was from Maryland pulling a boat and demanded that I back up with my tractor and hay baler so that he could get by. I left the tractor and hay baler sitting there for a little while. There's no place to expand. I would like for y'all to really consider hard, and why are we wasting $26,000 money to study something that shouldn't be done to begin with? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Norris. Mr. Bob Beard.
Mr. Chairman, board members, Bob Baird, 15316 Kings Highway. We'll take a second to respond to Calvin, our good friend. I was involved with this activity. I'd love to discuss with him with the board later. But the entire idea that we have is to make the landing more available for people to fish and hunt in their land. Fish and Wildlife has agreed to provide a right-of-way if we prove that there is no problem with the archaeology in the area. In fact, the $26,000 is an archaeological study to make sure we preserve the area for archaeological study. Now, the reason for my discussion here tonight is I was on the internet and I ran across a study of the service calls on fire and service here in King George. And I was amazed at the number of units that weren't able to respond to calls because of lack of personnel. With that, I took the opportunity to review the standards from the National Fire Protection Association and noticed that on a good day, we're undermanned in this county. I urge the board to take a good hard look as to what we could do to support fire and rescue in this county. It's an important function for all our sakes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beard. Jeremiah Hanson.
Good evening. I'm Jeremiah Hanson and live at 12567 Claydale Boulevard, James Monroe District. I came to do two things tonight. One is to lend the supervisors a book called Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, which lays out responsibility of authorities to take care of those under their authority, even if a higher authority tells them otherwise. I'll hand out the books in a minute. The second is to remind the board that on December 5th, 2019, King George unanimously became a Second Amendment sanctuary. This reminder is timely as there are currently 24 gun control bills in Virginia legislative houses. They just did switch over. Each of these violates the rights of Virginia citizens to defend themselves with firearms of their choosing. HB 2 and SB 2 would ban nearly all semi-automatic pistols and rifles, along with magazines over an arbitrary 10-round limit.
Sir, excuse me. I really want to hear what you're saying. I'm having a hard time hearing you.
Sorry, it sounds like I'm being picked up okay.
Can you start his time? Because I didn't hear from the very beginning.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. We'll restart your time.
Thank you.
No, you restarted time, please. Thank you.
All right, we good? All right. I'll start off from the beginning. I'm Jeremiah Hanson, live at 12567 Claydale Boulevard, James Monroe District. I came to do two things. One is to lend supervisors a book called Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrates, which lays out responsibility of authorities to take care of those under their authority, even if a higher authority tells them otherwise. I will hand the books out in a minute. The second is to remind the board that on December 5th, 2019, King George unanimously became a Second Amendment sanctuary. This reminder is timely as there are currently 24 gun control bills in the Virginia legislative houses, and all of them just switched their houses to the other side. Each of these violates the rights of Virginia citizens to defend themselves with firearms of their choosing. HB 2 and SB 2, which are identical, would ban nearly all semi-automatic pistols and rifles, along with magazines over an arbitrary 10-round limit. Yes, this was found unconstitutional under Bruin. These bills represent a callous disregard for the rights of the citizens of the county. It is yet to be seen if they will be passed in both houses, vetoed, and the veto overturned. The county must hold to its pledge to defend civil rights should these bills, or similar future bills, be passed into Virginia law. The county clearly stated its intent in the resolution after establishing why the resolution was needed. I quote from the resolution, that King George Board of Supervisors hereby declares King George County, Virginia as a Second Amendment sanctuary, and that the King George Board of Supervisors hereby expresses its intent to uphold the Second Amendment rights of the citizens of King George County, Virginia, and that the King George Board of Supervisors hereby expresses its intent that public funds, resources, employees, lands, buildings, or offices of the county will not be used to restrict the Second Amendment rights of the citizens of King George County or to aid federal or state agencies in the restriction of said rights, and that the King George Board of Supervisors hereby declares its intent to oppose any infringement on the right of law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms using such legal means as may be expedient, including, without limitation, court action. End quote. The county has publicly stated that it will defend the rights of its citizens and refuse to aid state agencies in depriving its citizens of their rights. This includes laws that were passed since 2019 that infringe on citizens' rights, like red flag laws that confiscate firearms without due process, as required by the Fifth Amendment. I encourage the board to be vigilant in its duty to protect its citizens and encourage the Commonwealth to also respect the rights of Virginians. The county is our last line of defense from unconstitutional laws. We are watching to see if you uphold your oaths in the Second Amendment resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. If you could just give the books to Ms. Fish, please.
Will do. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to be heard? Seeing none, is there anyone online, Mr. Dines?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I will now close the public comment session. Reports of members of the board. Mr. Sullins?
Thank you, sir, and thank you for everyone who came out tonight to make public comment. I really appreciate that. A couple things to report. Want to welcome Mr. Norm Rasavi. He's a retired county administrator with a lot of experience, so he's going to be joining us. And I don't want to steal Mr. Collins' thunder. I think he's actually going to do the proper introduction. But anyway, extending a welcome here. During the past couple of weeks, I got to attend the Fredericksburg Regional Alliance meeting. Got to meet some of the business people that make up that organization, as well as some of the county supervisors like myself that attend. Also had a follow-on meeting with Mr. Stroud here. I don't know why I couldn't remember your name. I'm not that old yet. But anyway, I got to have a follow-on meeting with him and the representatives from FRA and Birchwood, where we got to go over some of the maps and charts of the area of where the data center might be going in. And we're expecting a follow-on meeting from that, where we'll actually get to tour and go around and see some of the land areas and what they're planning to put in. So pretty good time there. Also met with some representatives from the King George Professional Firefighters and Paramedics Union, Local 4438, to better understand their staffing problems that they're dealing with. So Mr. Baird, thank you for bringing that up tonight. And also some of the training issues that they're dealing with. Mr. Davis and I were able to meet with a local resident who he wants to bring a business here into into Dahlgren specifically. And he has some questions about zoning, so got to enjoy breakfast at IHOP. I would invite all of y'all, if you got questions, you want to talk one-on-one, give me a call. I like meeting on Saturday mornings at IHOP, so, or Galleys, or wherever else they have good food. So anyway, all that aside, and then finally this afternoon, I got to meet with Dr. Boyd, superintendent of the schools, to go over some budget requests that he's going to be having coming up as we work through the budget process. So that's about it, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I attended the same meetings that Mr. Sullins has already covered. And was I make a nomination? Mr. Tom Kramer is currently serving on one of our boards for the I'm not sure the board's name, but I know his time is coming up in March. So I want to nominate him for the board, but I can't remember the name of the board. It's
So the motion on the table is the
wetlands, that's right. Yeah. The wetland.
Mr. Kramer for the Wetlands Board.
Yes, sir.
Second.
Is probably second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Go ahead, Mr. Stroud.
Yes, sir. That's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis?
Thank you very much. Thanks everyone for coming out. That's my dad reading scripture, so thank you, Pop. Miss Anna, thank you for coming out and speaking as you always do. You're always involved in the community. And what I like to see, and even with Mr. Norris, heard the name a million times around this county. I love to see and hear old King George names come out and actually get active in the community. It doesn't happen a whole lot. You know, we kind of sit back, we enjoyed our lifestyle, and we woke up one day and people are changing and taking and you feel like you're not involved. So I appreciate you being here. I really like to see more people come out that believe in our King George way of life and you know, we know that things have to progress, but we also know that it's worth protecting what we have. As far as being a sanctuary state a sanctuary county for our amendments and protect our rights to bear arms, I don't know how everyone else will vote as board. I have a good idea, but I can tell you that we will uphold those rights. That's our job to do. If we're the last county in the country, it's our job to do it. And we don't have to be like everybody else. You know, we can do things smart and protect people and their rights at the same time. And that's what we plan on doing. I appreciate that. I also want to make a nominee to a board today, Mr. Mr. John Smith to the library board.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
And I had one more. It's not broken down on my sheet, but Mike Jennings from my district has really been wanting to get involved with the tourism board. And you want to?
Yeah, Mr. Minor, did he come back in yet? They're actually, the tourism board has categories for each one, and I talked to Mr. Davis before, but we just need to know what category to put him in.
All right.
Mr. Minor, I'm putting you on the spot. Do you have a category from the tourism board? Mr. Davis has a nomination.
Yes, there's an opening for civic organizations, lodging, and I think those are the only two we have open right now.
Can he serve on both?
What's his background? Or their background?
I don't know what his background is. I just know he's really passionate about being on that particular board, and I hadn't had anyone else. If someone's passionate about doing something, I'm not going to volunteer. I'm not going to shoot him down. So if he could serve, I could nominate him for both.
Sure. Well, there's it's a 7-member board, including me. Mm-hmm. So one of the positions, he could take on the civic organizations or the lodging. It's whatever one he wants to represent.
Let's say the civics.
Okay.
So the motion is that Mr.
Mike Jennings
serve on the Tourism Advisory Board. Civics?
Civic organizations. Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Bender?
Thank you, Mr. Minor, for on the spot coming back in. And I want to thank everybody that comes. It's great to see more faces in the audience. And Marie, later in the Service Authority, I'll be addressing a lot of your concerns. So that's coming up. Mr. Norris, I loved hearing your voice again. I've known you for a long time, and I have some questions now because, we get so many things on the agenda, and I've been to Wilmot Landing, and it's a very nice place. But I do have some questions now, especially after our phone call, because it is very historical. But thank you for coming out and addressing some concerns about that and the neighbors that live there. One thing, a lot of this meeting was late tonight because of an accident on 301. It actually was right in front of my road to my house. And I took some pictures because I'm going to be sending them to Mr. Beal from VDOT because it reiterates again, when they raised the speed limit on 301, they really should have come and looked at a lot of it. And it's not Mr. Beal's fault. It's higher ups that made these decisions because they've decided that King George is a pass through for everybody to come to get off of 95. But for the second time in less than 6 months, one of my neighbors was hurt. And I really wish that VDOT would come and actually see when they make these changes and it affects people's lives. This last one, there was a small child in the car, and I hope she's okay. But the point of the matter is I live on the top of a hill, and people aren't paying attention, especially people from out of state. They don't know that buses pick up children there, and people have to stop because there's no turn lane or deceleration lane, and it's a quick turn. And we're coming up at the top of the hill, and then we immediately have to get off to the side of the road on our road. And so I wish that VDOT would actually come to King George sometimes and actually look at the roads before they make decisions because they want to make it a pass-through. And I've been passionate about that from when they first changed the speed limit there, but it's another one of my neighbors who was hurt. And I just wish that they would take consideration sometimes of the people that live on these roads. also the Second Amendment sanctuary. I think I'm the only one left who actually voted on that. And that was an interesting time. There were 500 people in the parking lot, in this audience, even around the corner of the door. It was the most surreal experience I've ever had in my life with that many people being here. So I understand, and I was one of the yes votes, so I appreciate you coming to talk about it, but I just wanted to mention that. That was a different experience. There were so many people here. I already mentioned about the service authority, which I'll be talking about later. That's where I spent most of my time in these last 2 weeks, so thank you. Oh, wait a minute, Mr. Collins, 1 second. Before I pass off, can I let my colleague on the board of directors go first with his board report?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Over the last couple of weeks, I did have some opportunity to sit down and speak with some of the administrative staff at the Service Authority. They were able to give me some background and fill me in on a lot of, I'd say, gaps in my own knowledge for how the Service Authority operates and some of the different functions that they can offer. I'm happy to speak with anybody on questions they may have as I continue to inform myself. Your questions can, help me better inform the rest of you here as well. I had to speak with them because I got a couple customer comments emailed from folks in my district. So in doing my own research to answer them, I found out some of these answers myself. So they are very valuable folks we have back there. There is 30 plus years of knowledge back there from some of those folks, and they are extremely, extremely intelligent, and some actually would like to help fix some of the issues with the Service Authority going forward. So I was glad to hear that, and I want to encourage both their participation, everybody's participation here. So Ms. Anna Maria, as we kind of spoke last time we were here, it's something that I do continue to work with Ms. Bender and the rest of the board here to try and help resolve some of those issues. Pastor Davis, thank you for your words coming out and reading scripture. That was it's wonderful to hear at these types of meetings. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. With the departure of the former county administrator in January, I stepped into the role of acting county administrator without having any training or experience in this role. My direct style of management upset some people, and for this I apologize. So I think it would be best if the board would appoint someone other than me as the interim county administrator. After my comments and after Mr. Stroud's comments, I would like to have a discussion in regards to that. I would like to welcome Mr. Vizvera, the senior advisor to the board. He will be doing the budget this year, and so tomorrow's meeting will be canceled until he continues to come through the budget for recommendations to the board. Ms. Fish, would you put out a cancellation of that meeting? Also, Mr. Stewart, the county attorney, is not feeling well this evening and could not make it, so we will postpone the items that are listed under his name. I would like to make an appointment to the LBBFCA, Mr. Paul Tucker.
Second.
Probably second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Mr. Stroud, you had additional comment?
Yes, I do. Thank you, sir. So I'd like to go back to Mr. Hanson's comments regarding the Second Amendment as well, because I was here that night and that was it was quite a night. Actually, I took signatures of a lot of the people that signed up. I had pages and pages of signatures because there was no record of all the people that attended until we did that. But I'm a very big Second Amendment supporter, as well as the First Amendment, and we wouldn't have one without the other. So I will definitely support the Second Amendment, sir, and back the county on that. And before I leave off that, I'd like to also thank Pastor Davis for the comments, because the rights we have are granted by the Lord Jesus Christ and not by the government. So thank you, sir. So with the chair's last comments, I'd also like to take this opportunity to nominate a new acting county administrator as Ms. Bender as the acting county administrator.
Sir, would that be a county administrator designee?
Yes, sir. That is acting. Yes, sir.
So is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor by roll call, Mr. Sullins?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye. Oh, sorry.
Mr. Stroud, I'm sorry. Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Bender?
I have a question of whether, but we don't have legal here, if I could actually, I'll abstain since it's about myself.
Okay, and I vote yay, and there's one abstention. So that passes. Okay, next we will have the consent agenda for the Board of Supervisors. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented for the Board of Supervisors.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Sullins?
Aye.
Chair votes nay. Motion passes.
Mr. Collins, I also would like to get a motion for consent agenda for the Board of Directors.
Second.
Second.
Right, with that being a proper motion, properly second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you, Ms. Bender. Next, we have the January 8th, 2024 King George Board of Supervisors and King George Service Authority minutes. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Is there a second from Mr. Sullins? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you. Constitution Officers Commissioner of Revenue. Ms. Puckett, do you have anything?
Good evening. I just have the cigarette tax report. July 2023 to present is $1,044,960. Total revenue is $5,207,407. Total packs sold 284,457. Deputy Simon and Deanna went out on January 8th for their monthly inspections and went out again February 16th, and all were in compliance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Puckett. Sheriff Giles, do you have anything to report? Does he need to report anything, sir? Okay. Next is Mr. Randy Jones. Not seeing Mr. Jones. Next, we would like to move the resolution. Ms. Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make a resolution right now to recognize March as Multiple Sclerosis Month. Whereas multiple sclerosis, MS, is a chronic, often debilitating disease of the central nervous system that afflicts nearly 1 million people in the United States. And whereas the disease is typically diagnosed while people are young in their 20s, 30s, and 40s in the prime of their lives and is 3 times more common in women than men. And whereas symptoms can start as tingling, numbness in the limbs or nerves, loss of mobility, coordination and vision, and even progress to paralysis. And whereas multiple sclerosis is not only a burden on a person's health, but also a financial burden to the person and their family, as the disease averages annual medical expenses of $65,612 per person and a nationwide total income burden of $85.4 billion as released in a 2019 study. And whereas it is a neurological disability persons with multiple sclerosis may have limited working capacity or employment opportunities, which may reduce earnings at an average annual loss of $18,542 per person with multiple sclerosis, as well as potentially causing family members to leave employment to become caregivers with an average annual loss of an additional $4,333. And whereas with an average of 200 persons diagnosed each week, the exact cause of multiple sclerosis is unknown with no known cure. And whereas it is important to have better education and awareness of multiple sclerosis so that persons living with multiple sclerosis can lead productive and satisfying lives for the benefit of themselves, their caregivers, families, and the entire community. And whereas the Multiple Sclerosis Alliance of Virginia provides programs and services for anyone in Virginia whose life has been affected by multiple sclerosis and has been committed through the years to heightening public knowledge and insight about this devastating and often crippling disease by planning several major statewide fundraisers and educational programs in order to raise awareness about the effects of multiple sclerosis. Now, therefore, it be proclaimed that the King George County Board of Supervisors hereby recognize March as Multiple Sclerosis Month and calls upon the residents of King George to join them in educating others on the effects of this disease in an effort to raise awareness of the struggles members of our community face each day with living with this disease, adopted this 20th day of February 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Roll call for a resolution. Mr. Sullins?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Ms. Bender?
Aye.
And I am aye. Thank you, Ms. Bender.
Can we have the
Sure,
person who requested, Ms. Southwell's here to take a picture, and we have a plaque for them.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sheriff, you stepped out. Do you have any report for the board? Sure. Okay, thank you, sir. Senior Advisor, Mr. Zahara, do you have any report? No report. Ms. Bender, consent agenda for the Board of Directors. Thank you.
Yes. I just want to clarify, I want to make another motion for the consent agenda for the Board of Directors. Do I have a motion? Because that will also include the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda for the Board of Directors?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, with the motion properly seconded, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Excuse me. So you're including the minutes in that?
Yes,
Okay.
it's in there.
Could I ask to be on a different motion for the minutes and the other consent agenda is one?
Would you like to pull the minutes out?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I need another motion. Could we have we're changing the motion there? We were ready to vote. Is there a problem with the minutes, Mr. Collins, or?
No, there's not a problem with the minutes.
So why can't they be in the consent order for yourself? Because I had a motion, I had it already properly seconded.
Because I wanted to say nay to the warrants and yay to the minutes. So I'd have to say nay to the minutes because it's included in the entire motion.
The only problem is I already had a motion properly seconded, so I'm going to go through.
Well, I was trying to get to discussion, but you kind of went by too quickly.
That is true, but usually we whip through that decision, that part, but
Is it proper for me to retract?
yes, you can retract it.
Retract the motion.
All right, thank you, Mr. Solons. Usually don't deal with that, but we will go through again. So I will ask for a motion, secondary motion for that. Another motion,
Which one are we talking about now?
just for the consent agenda. And you can put in the motion that you're going to withdraw the minutes out of it. Just so,
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented, but with the exception of removing the approval of the minutes.
okay. Do I have a second? Second. The motion properly seconded. Any discussion, Mr. Collins? All right. With that said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays?
Nay.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Do I have a second motion for the minutes?
Make a motion for the January 8th minutes.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, with a motion properly seconded, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. All right, so we're going to skip Mr. Stewart's portion because he is not able to be with us, which is SA 0211. Ms. Fish, can you put that on next? Thank you. We're going to move up to SA 0212, RFP for on-call water and sewer line repair. Ms. Hahn?
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. The Service Authority previously had both an on-call water and sewer line repair contract and a secondary on-call water and sewer line repair contract. The secondary contract could have been renewed in July of 2023, but the contractor declined the renewal. The primary contract was to be renewed December of 2023, but the Service Authority staff requested that contract not to be renewed. Therefore, the Service Authority has been without an on-call contract since December 6th of 2023. There have already been instances where a contractor was needed for emergency repairs. At this time, to ensure that we have a contractor available and to secure the best price for the Service Authority, staff would like to post a solicitation for an on-call water and sewer line repair contract. So with that, I recommend that you authorize the Service Authority to take the following actions. Post a solicitation on EVA, which is Electronic Virginia, for an on-call water and sewer line contract, and negotiate with selected offerer for the best price for the Service Authority.
Thank you, Ms. Hahn. Do I have any questions?
I have one. Why the Service Authority staff requested the contract not be renewed?
I think that they were having, and I don't want to speak totally for Mr. Eisenbeis, but I know that there were several instances where they had called that primary contractor and they were not able to respond in a timely manner.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody else have any, or Mr. Davis, do you want further clarification on that?
No, that was fine.
Mr. Solomons, do you have any questions? Mr. Collins? Lee? All right. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the RFP for an on-call water and sewer line repair and construction contract.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, with the motion properly seconded, any further discussion?
Yeah, I would just like to see, how many bids are we going to get on that? How many are you going to put out?
You don't know. So you will put out a RFP, and I think you've already seen it a couple of times, and it was in the packet again tonight. So we'll put that out. The last couple of times we put it out, we got 2 offers at each time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, motion probably say any further discussion? That being said, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any nays? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Hahn.
Thank you.
Next up is SAO 213, which is the scheduling of a public hearing for the reissuance of the VPDES permit VA 0092134 for the Fairview Beach wastewater treatment plant. Mr. Young.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. This is a public hearing for the permit renewal for the Fairview Beach wastewater treatment plant. This is simply a standard procedure for the reissuance of the permit, and it's an opportunity for the public to voice any questions, comments, or concerns about the treatment plant and its permit.
Mr. Young, just for clarification, this is a normal process for these permits. They come up for renew every so many years, and then it has to go out for public comment, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Does anybody else have further questions for Mr. Young?
Do not.
Mr. Collins, it's your district. All right. So we have a consensus to schedule that public hearing. Norm, we don't have to vote on this one, do we? To schedule a public hearing? Just consensus, correct? So we all, Jackie, okay. Well, that was easy for that one. That was real quick. But stay right there. We got the next one for you. Professional services for Perkins Corner decommissioning right-of-way acquisition services.
Yes, ma'am. This is professional services for the Perkins Corner decommission right-of-way acquisition services by RK&K. And this is to appropriate $113,802 for this service. This is to include but not limited to title research for each property, evaluation of the property through bar or appraisal, whichever is appropriate, price negotiation with the property owners, administration and coordinating services, closings, and tracking organization of the entire process.
Right, before I open up discussions, just for clarify for the audience and everybody else, this is to put the water and sewer lines down from Perkins Corner to Hop Yard so that we can take Perkins Corner offline and decommission that plant. This is something that is required as part of this process. And just for clarification, the funds using is the ARPA money that we got, the grant, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do we have any discussion or questions from?
So with what we're doing, if we're decommissioning,
Perkins Corner.
yeah, what exactly are we decommissioning? Is it a wastewater treatment plant or a water treatment plant or?
Perkins Corner wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, we're diverting all that to the Hopyard treatment plant?
Yes, sir.
And with half of that being offline, is that going to be, are we going to be?
This project does include upfitting the Hop Yard treatment plant to handle the flows.
Okay, so that would upgrade the Hopyard plant to handle all that flow.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This is all part of the process as a first step, is to get the easements, because am I correct? It takes a little while to get the easements. I know you on Friday took me in one section that has a little challenge to it to get the easements, because not everybody would like these lines to be running their roads. So sometimes they have to find alternatives. So what was it, about 9 months it can take sometimes, or it can take a while, right, to get some of these easements?
Yes, it can take quite a while to go through the whole process of each individual one, and it's about 25 easements we need.
Any further?
No, I'm good.
Any other questions? And this one just does require a vote on this one, correct? I think so, yeah. So do I have a motion? Just looking for a motion.
Is the motion to appropriate the funds? Because that seems to be part of it, to be appropriate.
Yeah, and I wish Mr. Stewart was here to ask that clarifying question.
So
Sir, can you speak into the mic?
I would assume you're appropriating the money and also approving entering into a contract.
Do we have a contract already?
Yes, we have a contract that should appropriate the money for it.
So I'll make a motion that we authorize the service authority to take the following action: appropriate $113,802 to the Perkins Corner decommissioning project and issue a purchase order in the amount of $113,802 against PSA 03242021-1400 to Rummel, Klepper, and Call RKK for professional services associated with the right-of-way acquisition services.
That works for me. Good job on the first full motion.
Yes.
Do I have a second?
From the ARPA fund. Second.
From the ARPA fund.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the ARPA fund. It was the 15.9, I forget the exact amount money. I wouldn't say ARPA fund. Okay, DEQ ARPA funds. Okay. Because there's some that we had got, and then DEQ gave us some, so we have to make sure the DEQ ARPA. So do I have a second?
Second.
All right, with the motion properly made and seconded, any further discussion? All right, now this is by roll call because it is finances. So Mr. Sullins?
Aye.
Mr. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Collins?
Aye.
Let's see if I get it right. Oh, I'm going to fail. Lee?
Aye.
Aye. I'm going to get it right eventually. Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Young. Before my portion, I'm going to ask Bowden to come up and give us a report. Thank you. While they're getting set up, I did send my colleagues the reports from 2023 from all the plants, and then also January's reports.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Good to see everyone this evening. So we'll go through our January operations monthly overview. And we, as always, will start with water. All of the monthly samples were collected for bacteriological analysis. They all passed. Annual water sampling of each of the wells has started to take place, and we'll wrap that up this month, this current month in February. All samples have been collected, I believe, besides the hop yard wells, and that is an annual requirement. The contractor has finished his work at the Mammoth Elevated Water Tower, and our operators are scheduling the tank refilling and then the subsequent required bacteriological samples to bring that tower back online. There have been mission control units installed at Hop Yards Well F and Arnold's and also Perkins Tower. And also kind of combined with the mission controls, there was a malfunction of the Hop Yard Water Plant PLC. PLC is a primary logic controller. It's essentially the computer, the brains that runs the water treatment plant itself, tells the pumps to turn on and off. That malfunctioned, and the King George County maintenance crew came in and did the repair. I'd be happy to give the floor over to the maintenance side to discuss that. From what I hear, it's very significant in what they did, and they saved the county quite a substantial amount of funds. The PLC that was there at the Hop Yard facility was antiquated. It was a vintage type, and the upgrade for the PLC that was proposed was a significant value, and the maintenance crew, specifically John Eisenweiss, was able to make something else work in its place. And so I'd be happy to lend the floor over to John if the board of directors would like to do so.
John, you would like to come up and tell us a little bit about it? And I'm glad you're feeling better.
With the failure of the PLC, which controls wells turning on and off, tank levels, booster pump pressure, fire pump pressures, it totally failed at the beginning of December. We actually ran it manually from day to day, every day and every night. We ran the wells, filled the tanks. I did receive a quote for the repair of this, which was $170,000. With PLC parts right now, they're going anywhere from 2 months to 2 years to get the parts. We could not wait that long. So with the addition of the mission units at the same time, we came up with some control functions, actually made our own PLC at a savings of about $160,000. And we're back running just like we were originally. So everything's working good, and we will add the additional mission units to the other wells at a later date, and everything's running fine. So, any other questions?
Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, John. I appreciate it. You've been doing a lot of like that recently.
All right. I thought that was important to kind of highlight the success of the maintenance group and John's efforts there. The microphone back over. There were well failures at Nadine's and Canterbury wells. They were repaired and replaced respectively by the King George County maintenance crew. And that wraps up water, and we'll move on to wastewater. We are still operating under an emergency procurement for chemical ordering, and we've reestablished PAC, which is polyaluminum chloride. It's a metal salt used for phosphorus reduction, and we're ordering that through Univar, and we feel we have better, more optimized treatment with that chemical. Several rain events throughout the county and the region attributed a lot of I&I inflow and infiltration at each of the water plants, but specifically it caused a TKN exceedance. That's a species of nitrogen at the Oakland wastewater treatment plant. Also, Hop Yard, we've had increased flow resulting from I&I as well, and because of that, we had to bring that SBR1, which has historically, for a very long time, has been offline, serving rather as an equalization basin and not as a reactor, what it was designed to do. And so in the conjunction with our operations team and the King George County Maintenance, that component was brought back online, which is a good thing in preparation for the decommissioning of Perkins. It's good to let that SBR1 run through its paces as a true component of wastewater treatment. The monthly geometric mean for E. coli was reported as a greater than 5. Our permit limit is 126. This is because the contract laboratory that we were using was analyzing on a low range method. And when they submitted the report to us, it had a greater than value, greater than what the method was designed to run. We have since then pulled all of our E. coli monitoring and all of the other species for bacteriological to our lab back in Mount Jackson. It's a little bit more of a cost to get it back there, but in the essence of making sure that the proper method is used, we felt it necessary to do so. There was permit exceedance at Perkins Corner, and this is attributed to high organic loading, and the issues are being point source traced back to FOG, as we call it in the industry, which is fats, oils, and grease. We had the exceedances for TKN, TSS, and E. coli. And we believe that it is a buildup of oil and grease in the collection system. For all of these exceedances that we had this past month in January, a letter of explanation was provided to DEQ. They're aware of these issues. They're ongoing issues, the issues that are not new to DEQ, not new to the authority, and are under consent order currently. And so I would like to make that a matter of note as well. There was a DEQ inspection at the Oakland wastewater treatment plant in January, and DEQ noted that there was a sand filter that was offline. It's been offline as far as we can recall, we can remember, but that sand filter has been offline for quite some time, and they are requesting that we do the necessary repairs and bring that sand filter back online. The King George County maintenance team is looking into what is needed to enact those repairs and bring it back online. So that is the end of the January monthly report, and be happy to take any questions from the Board of Directors.
Thank you. Go down the line. Mr. Solomons, Mr. Davis, Mr. Collins.
No, ma'am.
Do you have any questions? Thank you very much. I appreciate it. All right, hold on one second. So next, we will have one thing that's not on here, the RK&K document. Mr. Stewart is not here, so we will have to put that on the next meeting. And the last thing is the Service Authority update. So as I said earlier, I've spent most of my past 2 weeks doing Service Authority items. I've met with DEQ. I've met with Emboden, quite a few of their employees. I've actually, Mr. Young and I and Jamie went and visited a lift station, 2 lift stations at Hop Yard. And one of the issues, and please correct me if I'm getting wrong because I'm learning as I'm going, is with our I&I, which we've had for quite a while, the lift stations, is because we do not really have a pre-treatment plan and equipment in these lift stations. And the lift stations basically take the stuff that comes from your house, goes there, and then it's pumped to the plant. And we should have a pre-treatment that's like different bugs that go in it and also blowers to help blow it around. And I might not get it right, so please correct me if I'm learning. So we haven't had this for a while. Our former general manager, Mr. Weekly, had put in a plan for it. It had never been implemented to that as being an upgrade to try to help some of this I&I. And why it's important, especially at Perkins, is in I&I is many things. It's water, it's grease, it's fat, but at Perkins, especially, it's a lot of grease and fat and stuff that people put in it. I mean, it was amazing at the lift station at Hop Yard. There was not only feminine products, candy wrappers, toys. I was even told one time they found a bag of sweaters that someone had flushed down the toilet. So all these things cause the bugs to die and bad things to happen to these plants that causes I&I include problems at these plants. And so, you know, number one, please be careful of what you flush down your toilet because that does affect the system. But also, we do need to come up with some kind of pre-treatment plan and put in the item. Mr. Moden, come on up and help me.
So this is actually a permit requirement. The Perkins Corner wastewater treatment permit, the BEPS permit, was reissued approximately 180 days ago, the 1st of February. And some of the due diligence that we had to give back to DEQ is what is called a significant industrial user survey. And we are going through the collection system and submitting user surveys, in industrial or even commercial user surveys. And the purpose of that is to identify potential contributors to fats, oils, and grease. It could be heavy metals. It could be other chemicals that could affect the wastewater treatment plant. Anything that could be what DEQ determines deleterious to the wastewater treatment plant. And so that was a requirement from DEQ, and we're working through that. Our operations team and also our consulting team came up, and we went door to door, handing out these flyers and industrial users for the commercial districts of the collection system. It's not something that is tracked on a residential level. That's not necessarily a concern, but it is a concern in a commercial district. And so whenever you have a commercial kitchen, that it's always a possibility, and really always a contributor of oil and grease. And so on the other side of this survey, DEQ is then going to request or ensure that we institute a program that continues to monitor the oil and grease production and contribution to the collection system. And what we've done at other municipalities that has been very effective is consultants from our office go to each of these industrial users, these commercial kitchens. We monitor the oil and grease handling practices. We ensure that the proper grease trap and other interceptor, any other structures there that are designed to capture grease, it's installed, it's operational, it's in use. And we also go through the best handling practices of each of those compartments or each of those items, those components of the collection system, to make sure that they're being maintained. And it's all designed to protect our treatment plant. In January, as you saw, we had exceedances for TSS, TKN, and E. coli, and there's a reason for that. And it was due to high organic loading. And the high organic loading is what we're talking about here, oil and grease. We specifically collected samples from the influent as well as the biological treatment sections of the facility. We sent them down to a laboratory in Alabama, and we had them analyzed. It was a cost to us, to my company. It was about, it was over $2,000 for my company to do this. But we wanted to ensure that, we're looking at all options, and we're doing everything that we can to maintain treatment. And what they found in the report that they sent back to us is we are seeing inhibition, biological inhibition, something that is inhibiting our treatment from being effective as it could be. And their suggestion is that it is a result from an organic loading, which is the oil and grease. So sorry, I'm long-winded, but I thought it might be necessary to kind of characterize the issues that we have.
Do we have any questions on that? I appreciate you coming up because you explained it better than I was trying to explain it. But I want to also, speaking with many people, and many of your staff have been voting, they are really trying to help us. And it's understanding and trying putting all the pieces together. I made a list of all the things, I checked in, of things we need to do and as we figure out. But the service authority, I think, really has a path, and it could survive and succeed. It's just we have to be willing to finally do all the steps to make it succeed. And one is making sure we do the things that have been recommended over the years by things we've paid for, surveys and water management plans. We just finally have to bite the bullet and implement them. And I think we have a great maintenance staff that really, one of the things when I had lunch with them, they said is, we want more training. We want to be certified to save the service authority and its customers money than always contracting out services. We want to be the path to saving, basically, and in Bowdoin also. And I've even setting up conversations with DEQ to actually come and talk to us as a board to honestly tell us what do we need to do from DEQ to get on the right track, like actually have a sit down conversation with them to have that, to work it out. The other thing too is, Ms. Hahn was on this call, is we were, or actually it was a meeting, not a call. John was on the call with Brentak, and Jamie was in the room. That's our chemical supplier that we've been having trouble with. We actually sitting in the room finally, which is, I think for a while, the Service Authority actually hasn't been having conversations one-to-one, and it was nice to have a conversation because I think we worked it out and they understood why it was important we got the right chemicals. You might have won the bid, but we need to have the right chemicals. And I was very blunt with the gentleman who said, part of our problem with Perkins Corner is making sure we have the right chemicals, because Perkins Corner, it runs on a fine line, and we have to make sure to have it succeed until we take it off online, because remember, we have a permit. We have to make sure it follows the permit, whether it's going to be decommissioned or not, which is a cost. And so getting the right chemicals so that we can have it succeed until we can get it offline, hopefully sooner rather than later. Adding key position. You can sit down, Mr. Moder. Sorry, I should have told you to do that first off, but thank you. Getting a general manager in place, maybe reorganizing some positions or adding a couple in positions in for efficiency, consolidation of our files. I will tell you, Ms. Fish helped me find a file because we had a permit that we had to respond to. I had to find it, and it was over here and not at the Service Authority. So that needs to be clarified and files put in one location. Adding of key positions for better management and customer service. Maybe a forensic audit, an outside firm to look over the authority and better operational plan. Look at spending and purchases. Need a real review of the budget and long-term CIP planning. Better relationship with regulators. Restructuring the debt and lowering debt fees for residents. Stretching out the debt over a longer period of time. I've talked to people who've run bigger authorities, and one of the things they said, water and sewer is never really a profit-making enterprise. And you're supposed to spread the debt over generations, because that's usually how long water and sewer lasts, 60, 70 years. So you stretch the debt out over generations as opposed to making the people at that time pay all of it. That's just the way water and sewer is usually not a profit-making venture. I mean, it's in the public sector. Address I&I issues. Lift stations need to have pre-treatment plans. If a business purchasing the proper equipment so don't have to contract for everything. Training for employees for advancement. Better and proper management oversight. Water plants, some of them, like one in particular, the Bunbury well, I don't know why we even have it, because it doesn't really service anybody. Get rid of the water wells that we don't really need, to save us some more money and efficiency. I also spoke with someone who's a consultant, and he gave me some ideas if we wanted to look for some consulting services for looking at the growth of the water and sewer system and long-term water needs and sewer needs. Review a regional plan for more water treatment plants and necessary water lines. Review potential surface water withdrawal points. Review of type of treatment plants to associate with surface water. Review existing water treatment equipment for compliance and potential upgrades. Review water distribution system as a whole. And then there's a whole bunch, there's financing. He gave me a whole bunch of things that will be in my final report to show all the things that we can do. And the consultant service wasn't even, very expensive as opposed to a lot of other things we do. Well, those are many of, review the O&M that Imboden provided us. They provided us a list of from the highest to, I guess from the really need to the really be nice of how we can upgrade all the plants. Well, the ones that we were keeping, the 3 wastewater plants that will stay permanently, and then the wells or the surface water intake when we get there. So these are all things I've been investigating, and I've got half of my report done. So I'm going to take any questions from my colleagues, and I'll just go down the line. Mr. Solons? Mr. Davis?
No, ma'am.
Mr. Collins? Do you have a question? Lee? All right, that being said, that's all I have right now. But I will, hold on a second, let me get to the verbiage. We'll open the second public comment just for the Service Authority. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. In order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak, please provide your full name and district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly included in the public record. Would anybody like to come up and give comment? Is anybody online, Mr. Dines?
No, Madam Chair.
Did anybody receive correspondence once they've been sitting up here?
Not.
All right. With that, I'll close public comment, and I'll look in for a motion to adjourn the Service Authority portion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the Board of Directors to Tuesday, March 5th, 2024 at 5:30 PM in the Robert H. Combs Boardroom.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
With that, and any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned for the Board of Directors. Can we, Mr. Collins, take a 3-minute recess so we can have one board member depart?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
I'm good.
Thank you, ma'am. I'll read too. Oh. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
The Board of Supervisors is now back in session. Item 0221, Mr. Jamel Carr and Mr. Kendall Jenkins, interims with the Department of Economic Development and Tourism, Native American Heritage Trail, King George Project.
Good evening, everyone, and members of the board. My name is Jamil Carr. Oh, sorry.
My name is Kendall Jenkins.
And we are with the Economic and Tourism Department. We decided to call this project Native American Heritage Trail, since the theme of the geocache trail is Indigenous history and facts. We've been working with the geocache project since late November, so hopefully you enjoy some of our ideas. And if not, we will gladly accept any feedback to improve the project. With that being said, let's get started.
Sir, could you just step forward a little bit so that you can hear in the mic? Thank you.
So we have the history of the project.
You need an IT specialist in here. Yeah, IT specialist. Snack Shack is we need to go to Snack Shack.
Sir, would you be able to continue without that particular?
Life-saving emergencies. Here for you. All right, well, for many years, Civil War trails have linked historical sites in our region, but soon a new type of trail will be emerging in nearby King George County, Virginia. It's a trail that spotlights local Native American tribes. Northern Virginia Bureau Chief Julie Carey reports on the local university students who are powering this new effort.
For hundreds of years, the Rappahannock and Patawomeck tribes fished the rivers in and around King George and Stafford counties. Those same tribes still here.
We're getting the word back out that we are still here. We are the first people of Stafford County. We can date ourselves back to 1300 in Stafford County.
They are getting the word out now with the help of students and their professor at University of Mary Washington. King George County economic development officials approached the professor with an idea. They wanted to create a Native American heritage trail to drive ecotourism and to draw visitors to public access points like this one.
The first step that we did was we said we need to consult with the tribes whose stories we'd be telling.
Then the class did a deep dive.
We then started diving into the archives, the historical records, oral histories, and the archaeological record as well.
This is an example of what they've created. Signs that will go up in 7 different locations in King George. Each one tells a different story about the local tribes, spotlighting the past and present. Brad Hatch is a member of the Patawomac tribe.
Now, when you learn Virginia history, you learn about a lot of the stuff that happened in Jamestown, and that's kind of the last place you learn about Indians in Virginia history. But we've been here all along. We've been preserving our own culture and heritage, and it's here for everybody to see.
The hard work of these students putting that heritage and culture on full display.
What is kind of the sign going about right here?
They also envision their project inspiring others to do some research of their own about Virginia's very first residents.
So I'm hoping that these things inspire.
So what y'all saw there was a little bit of a snippet of the overall scope of this project, which was started way back in 2021. We are hoping to start something that is adjacent to this effort and sort of expands upon this knowledge and history of Native American heritage within the community.
So here we have the overview. In this presentation, we'll be discussing and defining geocaching, project concepts, containers and puzzles, rewards, cache locations, cost, and county benefits. So what exactly is geocaching? It is an outdoor activity that involves using different techniques to hide and seek for caches. Caches are containers that vary in size and in appearance, but usually contain small and expensive items and a log to document their discovery. The participants can use geocache.com to find and track for caches. Geocache.com is a website anyone can use to create their own geocache trail and participate in a trail. This website also serves as a way to teach people about geocaching in general and various types of geocaching. Geocaching is growing in popularity with 83 million places all over the world and 1.9 million active participants. Our geocache concept container. We will be using ammo boxes for our geocache since they are weatherproof, durable, and non-expensive. The geocache will contain logs for cache participants, small trinkets like badges, for example, along with other information will be stored inside. Our geocache concepts puzzles. As of right now, we plan to use crossword puzzles to use primary locations as the answers. In order to find the cache locations, participants can use 2 different methods. The first being geocache.com, where the caches are marked using coordinates. The second option would be through printing out customized crossword puzzle that will reveal the next location as well as other trivia involving the tribes that are part of the trail. The paper logs that participants will use to document the discovery will be in cylindrical maze boxes that will vary in difficulty. Geocache posts. The geocache post will contain coordinates to each cache, an overview of important location info, details regarding cache information. Along with this, we'll be listening to important community feedback. Completion awards. We will have stuffed eagles with King George logos on them. Relating to this, we are open to any contributions to our partners would like to add to the caches or completion rewards. The proposed location for participants to collect the completion reward will be King George County Museum. You might be asking yourself, why an eagle instead of any other animal as the completion reward? Well, eagles are known as prayer messengers of the Rappahannock tribe. We felt it would be important to acknowledge this by having stuffed eagles as a completion reward. With that being said, to make this whole process more manageable, we've decided to make these products available as supplies last. Along with this, the supplies may have to be refilled yearly depending on the outcome of the trail. Locations of the trail. Next, Kendall will be explaining each location of the trail, why we decided to choose them, along with other information.
So depicted here is an outline of the locations that we have picked out for the trail. The total distance to reach all 10 is around 40 miles. As you can see, the locations depicted here are largely accessible, with many of them being public parks or facilities. All the other locations that we have picked are great business partners who are looking to see exposure as more people interact with our proposed trail. Now, for the sake of saving time, I will only be discussing 3 locations that are meant to represent the various areas that visitors are expected to engage with as they navigate King George. The first city is being Caledon State Park. Caledon is one of King George's largest and most important natural landscapes that has multiple community events a year and is a great source for outdoor recreation. The park is over 2,000 acres of old-growth forest that has many hiking trails, as well as facilities closer to the front of the park, such as restrooms, picnic shelters, and a children's play area. The most important aspect of this park is its seasonal population of bald eagles, making it a huge spot for bird watchers. With this focus on the beauty of the bald eagle, this cache was meant to describe the sacred connection that the Rappahannock tribe has with the animal, as well as the importance of eagle feathers in various Native American traditional ceremonies and lifestyle. Lastly, this location is really critical towards directing trail goers towards our next locations, which are going to be situated in Dahlgren. With that, I want to bring up Barnesfield Park. This is another large park that serves as a great place for visitors who are coming from the western end of King George to rest, maybe even have a spot for lunch, while also being a great entry location for those who are coming from the eastern side of King George, as well as those who are coming in from out of state in places like Maryland. This sign will focus on introducing the common connections that Northern Neck tribes had with each other, as well as how some of these relationships were formed. This cache is intentionally works in tandem with the other proposed sign for the Native American Heritage Project, which will be situated at Wayside Park, which just so happens to also be close to the Dahlgren Heritage Museum. It is worth noting that the Dahlgren Heritage Museum is a significant location for the county as well, as it showcases many of the local histories of the community, as well as the history of Dahlgren's naval presence. Lastly, to showcase the southern end of King George, we have Land's End Wildlife Management Area. While this preserve does require a $4 entry permit to get onto the site, the experience that it offers is far worth this price of admission. You see, this location offers stunning views of the local forest in King George, as well as the Rappahannock River, while also offering an extended pool of wildlife for potential visitors to view while during their visit to the trail. This location is also more importantly essential to the county's indigenous history, as it is home to the Nzatiko Nation, who have multiple critical locations both in and around Land's End Preserve. Land's End proudly acknowledges this Nzatiko presence. So while on this location, visitors will be able to interact with the sacred sites of the Nzatiko while also gaining an excellent, safe experience that is very educational. Next, I'm going to bring my partner Jamil up here to talk about some of the important aspects we think you should know about the tribes, such as maintenance, about the trails, such as maintenance, costs, as well as the overall benefits that both the locations and the county are expected to see with the opening.
Trail maintenance. We will have to make yearly visits to refill the cache trinkets and to check how many are still left, along with checking if the cache is damaged or stolen. Cost of the project. The total cost of the cache locations are $0.00. It costs absolutely nothing. The county cost is absorbed by ARPA funding, which includes marketing, materials, maintenance, and setup. Benefits. Some of the benefits are increased visitors to the county and tourism-based businesses, creation of an outdoor recreational asset, increases representation of and awareness of regional indigenous tribes. It generates more tourism revenue for King George County and businesses. It's low maintenance and it has exponential growth for expansion. Questions and feedback?
Any questions or comments from the board? Mr. Sullins?
I got a couple. I'll start off. What is the real cost? You show 0, but you also mentioned some of the funds coming from ARPA. What's the actual cost?
So the anticipated cost for all the materials for the trail is anticipated to be at $1,159.
Okay, cool. The Eagle. Are you sold on using a Texas A&M sweater on that thing? Or
We had ideas for putting multiple logos, not just King George, but kind of making it a mixed bag with also our other partners' logos as well. So give it a little bit of diversity, and maybe offer an incentive to go back and complete the trail another time.
Gotcha. And I think the location of these things kind of take care of themselves, but I want to make sure that you're considering safety for the folks that are finding them, especially if they're trying to hide from muggles and stuff like that.
Yes, all the public park locations and places like Land's End are all strictly for hiking and bird watching only, and have many regulations in place to ensure not only the safety of the participants of the trail, but also the safety of the environment around them as well.
Any other comments? Ms. Bender?
Yes, I brought this up when I saw you guys give your presentation before. So is there going to be a link so people can apply for that permit if they want to do the full? And then my other concerns is, sometimes there's a price tag to something. Is there sort of you have to cover all of them? Like what if somebody doesn't want to do the permit? Have you thought about that?
We know that the Dog and Heritage Trail does require a free permit for entry, which is required online. We believe that the Land's End is purchasable on site. We're not 100% sure on having an alternative in place. We thought maybe about putting the cash closer to the parking area, so that way necessarily they don't have to go too deep into Land's End, but can choose to and broaden that educational experience after learning the history, and then that will be at the geocache.
That's a good answer. But yes, but having the information on there that's readily acceptable.
Yes.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 0222, Mr. Newchuk, Director of Department of Solid Waste and Recycling. A presentation. We have Waste Management in the audience.
We've got Pete Kistner, Senior District Manager, and Stephanie Holguin, Public Affairs Coordinator with Waste Management, should y'all have any technical questions regarding Waste Management's operations.
And we also have members of the Landfill Advisory Committee on board, Mr. John Windsor. Thank you, Mr. Newchuk. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. This came as a result of our most recent Landfill Advisory Committee meeting. They suggested that I come in front of y'all and just give an overview of our operations, but also cover the state of our equipment and go into a little bit of Waste Management's commercial operations. As you know, the King George County Department of Solid Waste and Recycling operates 2 citizens convenience centers and oversees the contractor Waste Management that operates the landfill. Over 27,000 residents can dispose of trash and recycling at our 2 county-operated convenience sites 7 days a week. We received over 26 million pounds of trash and nearly 16,000 cubic yards of brush in 2023. We also recycled 1.2 million pounds of metal, batteries, and commingled recycling at our 2 centers in 23. Unfortunately, commingled recycling costs continue to rise, and starting January 1st, they went up an estimated 20%. There's only 1 recycling transfer station between Manassas and Richmond. So they're unfortunately with one truck doing our hauling. We're not going to get a better deal by traveling further. Our smaller centers, Perkins Corner, you can see it there. Smaller of the 2 centers, accepts primarily bagged trash, metal, and oil for recycling. It has 3 aging waste quip trash compactors and 1 marathon recycling compactor, open tops for recycling overflow, and for reserve trash and for metal recycling. All 4 compactors are nearing the end of their service life and need to be replaced. We've had 2 contractors take a look at them to find out if a rebuild in place was viable, but unfortunately it's not. They're underpowered. We run them on single phase electricity, which causes them to run more cycles to compact waste than would a three-phase unit. Back in 2019, the original host agreement requires Waste Management to provide 3 centers to the county. Waste Management approached the county with a request that the board consider paying for the expansion of Perkins Corner in lieu of that requirement to build an additional facility. A draft was submitted, which will be the next slide. And the board approved this on 5/21/19 with a recommended action to negotiate to make the change. No further progress was made, so it's been added to the items currently under consideration for the 21st Amendment to the host agreement. Waste Management's submission has been sent over to Mr. Stewart's. We're awaiting his legal feedback now. And I don't know if you can see, basically it doubles. We're going from 4 compactors to 8. So we will have 6 trash instead of 3 and 2 additional recycling compactors. The current draft of the 21st Amendment, like I said, includes those 4 additional new compactors and replacement of the 4 existing compactors. In the event the existing compactors are not replaced by the 21st Amendment, we'll have to replace them. They're nearing the end of the service life. In the last 2 years, each unit has received at least 1 motor. Recycling has had a ram and a cylinder, as well as various other parts. And ideally, the upgrade to 3-phase power will be in place before there's any change to those units. The Sealston Convenience Center, as you see there, it has 6 open-top waste containers that are compacted with an on-site backhoe. Has 1 recycling compactor. We can't find any badge information on it. One contractor said it appears to him to be 30 years old. We have an overflow recycling open-top compactor, 3 metals, brush disposal area, a refrigerant reclamation and recycling area, and a tire disposal area. Refrigerant is reclaimed on site by county employees and sent to a recycler. Brush is ground to reduce airspace that's used, and tires are cut on site and disposed of. And you can see our waste totals have gone up in 2019. It was, just under 9,278 tons. And then we were hovering kind of in the mid 10s, 10.6, 10.2, 10.5. And then last year we really spiked. We went up to, 13,000 tons. That's 26 million pounds. It was significant. And the way 24 is starting, we look like we're going to be closer to 23 than 22. There's just a picture of our brush pile. We have a contractor come in twice a year and grind it. Costs approximately $25,000 per grind, and then we haul it with on-site equipment up the hill. You can see there, this was during the CIP process to replace concrete in the metal disposal area. That's why there's a metal box over by the tires. That's all been removed. Refrigerant reclamation in the back. In the foreground, you've got used oil recycling and antifreeze and lead acid batteries. So this is the King George County landfill. It's situated on a 630-acre site with a waste disposal area of approximately 291 acres. The facility was designed to exceed all the requirements of the EPA's Subtitle D regs, and the landfill liner system is equivalent to the liner system of a hazardous waste landfill. But no, we are not permitted for hazardous waste. We don't accept it. It has a triple composite geosynthetic liner system and a clay liner, which exceeds the state requirements, a leachate collection system, stormwater management system, and a gas collection system. The on-site gas energy plant produces enough power for 8,000 homes and businesses. We receive a 10% royalty payment on gas revenues. That's going to go up to 15% when we hit the permitted expansion, probably in 27. It's estimated to have a remaining life of approximately 21 years, but due to dynamic compaction and other factors, that might go up, or it could be off, I guess, either way, by as many as 2 years. Here's your rail tipper. You have waste that comes to the commercial facility either by rail or over the road. There's the gas to energy plant. Common misconception is that smoke. It's not, it's water vapor. There's your truck tipper. So there's the other Main Avenue where waste is brought in. So that gas host fee in 2023 amounted to $474,640. The host fee was $6.596 million. So the total fee paid by Waste Management to the county was a little over $7 million. And if you look at the tonnage totals received by the commercial landfill, you know, it was 1,704,000, 1.8, then it went down. As you know, the host agreement caps that total at 1,248,000 tons. Due to the 20th Amendment, it raised it up to 1,600,000. There's two different dates quoted in it, but if you go with the later of the two dates, that 1.6 million will expire at the end of this year, in which case it will revert back to the 1,248,000 ton. So that's it for me. Do y'all have any questions?
Any questions or comments? Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I have some. Thank you for the brief, sir. So a couple things. One, the odor that comes from landfill. So I'm not sure if you know where I live, at the Rokeby Farms, Rokeby Plantation area. And
Across from Hop Yard, correct?
yes, sir.
Yes.
And, you know, there are times, depending on which way the wind's blowing, that I can smell the landfill up there. So, you know, that something probably should be addressed with the odor.
Pete Kistner can speak to that. So we don't normally get reports that far out. We get them primarily on the ring roads surrounding the facility, Bloomsbury and Fletcher's Chapel. And there was an uptick in odor, especially in late fall, early winter. We have been maintaining notes, and Pete, if you wouldn't mind, if you want to talk a little bit of all y'all have done as a result of that. Now, out of curiosity, have you noticed an improvement in the last, let's say, 3 weeks?
I noticed the odor in the last 3 weeks. I don't know about an improvement.
You are a significant distance from the facility. Now we know that when leachate is hauled down the road, that does sometimes create an odor. And normally my odor complaints, they come in a little closer, but you know, Pete, do you have anything to say to this, or?
I'm typing those numbers down, so the next time I can call one of them numbers up and invite you up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I give my cell phone out to everybody. So I spend most of my time over in Oakland Park, the largest, highly developed area closest to our facility. Yeah, but I tell people, when you smell it, give me a call as soon as you can. Quicker I can get out there. And we know what hydrogen sulfide smells like. That's what you're smelling typically.
Sir, can you introduce yourself and answer the question for him, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Pete Kistner. As Mike mentioned, I'm the Senior District Manager for Waste Management. So as he alluded to, there being an uptick in reports of offsite odors through late fall and in the first part of the winter. We've taken several steps to address that, along with increasing our frequency of tuning the well field, where we're adjusting how much vacuum is placed on each individual collector to optimize that collection. We have added numerous additional collectors into the waste mass with horizontal collectors, ribbon collectors. We also recently completed a 7-acre install of interim cap, which is just a geomembrane over top of the waste that prevents the gas from escaping and allows us to pull vacuum harder on it to collect the landfill gas and not let it escape. We have accelerated the planned gas project for 2024. We've actually already started it. It wasn't scheduled to begin until May, but we've already started it now. So we have noticed, as Mike mentioned, on site in the immediate surrounding area that in recent weeks, especially with the addition of that 7 acres of interim cap, that the odors have pretty much gone away. So like Mike mentioned, we encourage the same thing. If there's anybody that notices any odors or any other issue, we definitely want to know about it because we want to address it and jump on it as quick as possible.
Thank you, sir. Before you sit down, I've got a second question.
Shoot.
Whether it's you or Mike that address it, but so I have a concern here in the county, especially on Route 3 between here and Fredericksburg, and that's with trash. And there's a lot of trash. And I guess they just picked it up last week, and there's already a lot of trash right back out on Route 3. And, I've spoken to sheriffs and deputies a number of times, and, a lot of people quit it to the trash trucks. And, it's not all trash trucks because the addresses, unless the stuff blowing out where the address is on, it's blowing out of your trucks. But, I don't think it's all yours, but, people tend to say, well, it's the trash trucks. And a couple times I have seen it, and then, I'll take a picture of the truck, it's coming out. I don't know if it's y'all's or whose it is, but it's got the screen going over. So I would just ask that if there's anything that you can do to help limit the trash coming out of the trucks, it would be appreciated by myself for sure.
No, absolutely. So, as you alluded to, the majority of the vehicles that come to the facility, the customers that use the facility, are not WM vehicles. But irregardless of that, if we get reports, especially if you are able to capture a truck number or company name on it, then I definitely reach out to the appropriate party and report that. And then not only does WM, but Mike's staff as well conduct inspections to make sure that the vehicles coming into the site are tarped and that they are not arriving at the facility untarped. So that's something that we take seriously as well.
Well, I would greatly appreciate that. I mean, you see every truck coming in. I mean, you got a gate there, and I don't know who all sees that, but
sure,
you're definitely able to do that. So it's appreciated. I didn't know to report it to you guys, but
yeah,
I will.
any issue that you have, whatever it may be, and not just issues, we like to hear, positive things too.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, definitely keep the communication there, and we will jump on whatever we can to make it better.
Thanks, sir.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bender, you had
Suggested by Chairman Collins, we also reached out to the local sheriff's office as well as the state police and requested increased litter enforcement. We've seen in neighboring areas that is one of the most effective ways to cut down on litter is to have tickets written.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Bender, you had a question?
Yes, I just want some clarification. You mentioned the fees for the recycling. So how effective is recycling, to be honest? And how much does it cost us to recycle? Because I've had that a lot of people, because many people think they put it in there and magically it all gets recycled, but it doesn't.
Well, it depends on what you read. There was a Greenpeace report recently that people are citing that gave an extraordinarily low number. It said that, we are paying $125 a ton for a transfer station to then take it, compact it, and they send it down to what's called a MRF, a material recovery facility. And the MRF, cleans it, packages it, and sells it to people that want to buy the recycling. So, we're taking it on good faith that everything that we're paying for is being done properly. The transfer station is bundling it, shipping it off to the MRF, and then they're finding buyers for it. But there's a wide variation on the effectiveness. The Greenpeace report was, I forget what 15% they were saying, which seems low. And other numbers the Waste Management can provide are far higher. They're in the same business where they do it. So it's I can tell you that we're doing what we should be doing. We're paying for it at $125 a ton. Now metal, we make money. Metal is easy to recycle. It's an excellent product and be reused over and over. Lead acid batteries, we make a little bit of money. With high oil prices and gas prices, we make a little money on that. It's the commingle that you're probably talking about.
Yeah, I was just, because when it comes down to it, we're paying to recycle, basically.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, if people have this idea that you're going to make money recycling, you're going to make money on metal. You're going to lose money on commingle, and you're going to lose a lot more money on glass. And Yeah, it's, you have to understand you're doing it as a best practice, but there is a significant cost involved with it.
All right, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else?
You mentioned glass, and I've read several reports just over the past 5 years about how it's pretty much useless to recycle glass. Like they have so much glass that people have these, like in Northern Virginia, they have big containers just for glass where people put them in there and they're just taking those containers and dumping them in with the regular trash because it's all for show when it comes to doing glass and things of that nature. So I'd like to kind of review more about, not that I'm, recycling and what really the big benefit is going to be in the long haul.
Yeah, so, and they're trying to find more innovative uses for glass, not necessarily reusing it for the same product, but for different. I mean, you've seen everything for, and I think this is a terrible idea, laying, pipe beds with it, and using it for underlayment, but they're trying to find other uses to keep it out of the landfill. But you're absolutely right. It's cheaper to mine the ore and process glass than it is to reuse glass.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming.
Oh, yes, sir.
0223, Mr. Ennis, broadband.
Evening, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
I think Mr. Dines is pulling up a presentation.
Mr. Ennis, there were people in the room tonight that were expecting you to be here because they had some situations with the broadband. So we're a little disappointed that you're not here, but go ahead with your presentation, please.
Mr. Dines, if you'd like, if you give me sharing ability, I can pull it up on my computer. So. Chairman Collins, I apologize for not being there in person. I was told to call in and do a remote participation if that was available. At the next update, I will be there in person.
Did you receive the request, Mr. Ennis?
So that any time that the board has a public presentation for broadband, we would like you here in person.
I'm just saying it's taking a long time to get the brief vote.
So while we're waiting for this to come up, there's a Mr. Lamb that sent a text to me today in regards to problems with the broadband. I don't have his address. I do have Mr. Norris here, that 7017 Indiantown Road, 7017 Indiantown Road, that lives, they're using the right of way, his right of way for the broadband to go to his in-laws' house across the street, but they won't give it to him. So I would hope that you can reach out to Mr. Norris at 7077 Indiantown Road. And I hope I can get Mr. Lamb's information. Does anybody else have any particular name?
Mr. Collins, I actually sent Mr. Ennis, Mr. Norris's information and a couple other folks, and I wanted to know if there were some of those folks that did not get included on the original mapping because their houses have been built in the last 2 years. And I know we have accommodated some folks that are in that similar situation because they were not on the 2021 maps, but they are in the same address. And the other address I gave you, Mr. Ennis, you're going to the person's daughter's house and passing by his house, but his house was built 2 years after his daughter's house. So I hope you can speak to that and clarify, because there's a lot of people that would like to use your service. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Yes. So if there are addresses like that, I will run them down on an individual basis. Supervisor Bender pointed out, we go to certain locations that were approved in a grant several years ago, and we are not allowed to, not supposed to add locations to the grant area unless the incumbent cable company has an opportunity to say no public subsidy can go to this location. So while we do build the capacity in the network to expand after we finish our grant area, we are not supposed to change the locations where we provide service. The minute the grant closes, we're going to go out there and compete and go to other locations that were not, in the grant. But we're very focused on going to the unserved locations that were eligible and approved for funding 2 years ago, and we got a couple other programs in the future to make sure that folks who were left behind for whatever reason don't have to pay a high installation fee. And I got that info for you all at the end of this presentation. And again, Chair Collins, if there are folks who reach out to you, if they give you their contact info, pass that along to me, and I will run them down on an individual basis. With that, I'd like to move to the next slide. Okay, so the project summary, where we are right now, 95% of all of the miles that All Points Broadband is going to build in the county have either been constructed or they are released to the construction crews. Separately, Dominion Energy Virginia has completed their construction of what is called middle mile fiber. That's mainly along the main roads. We connect to that to get out to the internet, but the segment of the network between Dominion and the individual residents is 95% constructed or released to construction. I got a map on that later on here. The last interaction that we're waiting for between Dominion and All Points is to splice the networks. So at various locations across the county, we will connect to the middle mile that Dominion has built. Obviously, we can't do that until our last mile is constructed. Good news in the county, recently we activated a fiber service area, which is kind of a segment of the county. This one is called King 3. That is where Supervisor Bender is testing our network cabinet there last month. All those folks are eligible to sign up for service. We've been emailing them, making sure people sign up. The King 3 portion of the network on our northern neck has had the highest take rate so far, which is evidence that people are willing and able and waiting for the broadband to come. And once it's available, they'll sign up pretty quickly. King 2, which I have a map of this later in the presentation, will be the next fiber service area to get service. The remaining other 4 in the county will be active shortly after we have permission to attach to all of the Dominion Energy poles. Coming down to the last 3 tickets on that, I got some stats here for you all to keep track of compared to the last time I gave a presentation. I want to remind folks that they should go to apbfiber.com to pre-register. There's no obligation for service here. We just need to collect your information, collect your email address, your mailing address. And once your fiber service area, so your neighborhood, can get service, we'll send you an email to sign up, select your level of service that you want, and start the installation process. This is different than the installation process of folks who already have let's say a BreezeLine connection or a Comcast internet. The installation step here is that we need to send a crew out to do a survey of your driveway or the yard or wherever we need to attach our cable between what's called the last mile and your home. And a crew will come in and install that to the outside of your home. You don't need to be there. The next step in that process is to, at your convenience, set up an installation where an All Points employee comes into your home. They set up the Wi-Fi, they connect your device to make sure everything works well. in the case of folks who already have internet access, they don't need to worry about that first step. But so it's a little bit different here. We actually have to run a cable between, the poles along the road up to your home. We want folks to do that as soon as possible, and we'll email you all if you register. You do not have to pre-register to be included. You're in this project no matter what. And this is just for notifications. We're not going to spam you with sales pitches or anything like that. It's just to notify you that you can sign up for service. And then at the end of the presentation, I'm going to go through, it's called the BEAD program. This is a Federal Infrastructure Act funding that King George is eligible for. It's a program that the state is rolling out later this year. I got a couple slides on that just for background info in case any of your constituents ask you about that. Chris, we can go to the next slide. So we've been talking a lot about Make Ready probably the last 6 or 8 months. Feels like longer than that, but we are laser focused on making the poles in the county ready for All Points Broadband to attach our fiber. Quick reminder here, we don't own any electric poles. They're either Dominion Energy Virginia or Northern Neck Electric Cooperative. And we go through a long engineering and construction process to make sure our cables can attach safely. All Points pays for our portion of the cost. Once those are all approved, we're allowed to attach. I've been sharing a screenshot of the database that we share with the pole owners. Last couple of updates. We are down to 3 tickets for 73 different poles in King George. The oldest ticket there, it's kind of hard to tell, has been open for 410 days. That means 410 days ago, Dominion accepted our request to attach to a series of poles, and those are still in process. When we set our construction timeline, it was estimated that these would be 165, 195 days, give or take, in an ideal world. And we're looking at 410 days for the oldest ticket. Now, that is a long time. I also, always have to point out that we are doing an order of magnitude more poles than has ever been requested in Virginia, and is about to be requested across the country for attaching fiber to rural electric poles. Dominion in the last year has probably gotten 10 times the number of pole requests than they would in a normal year. Northern Neck Electric Co-op got 170 times the request, all from All Points. They processed 12,000 poles in a year at the co-op, which is an amazing achievement. Next time you see a Northern Neck Electric Cooperative employee, you should thank them. They knocked it out of the park. They finished in the county last fall. They met every expectation that we had, and we could not have done it without them. We're just waiting for 3 more tickets for Dominion before we can wrap up that step of the process. So Chris, we can go to the next slide. Here is a comparison between October and today. The columns are representing the number of poles that we need to attach to in the 6 different fiber service areas. Green means we have permission to attach. Yellow means that the pole owner, either Northern Neck two fiber service areas with a bit of visible yellow, and there's one actually in King 1. You can't see there, but there's one pole that Dominion needs to put approval in. So we made a lot of progress in the last couple of months. But this is something we work on every single day, every single week with Dominion and NEC while they were still doing Make Ready. It's stats that we want to share with you every time we give an update so you can keep track of progress that we are making. So Chris, we can go to the next slide. Here's a stat that we shared last time. Wanted to provide an update. We are right now, we have 3.5% of all of the miles out for construction right now. We've finished 154 miles. And there's only 7.5 miles left in the entire county for a permit for us to release to construction. So again, we're right at the edge, but This is a network, and it's called a network for a reason, and we can't connect to everyone until the entire network is built. So these last couple of percents, they're important. We were able to turn on one section of the network in King 3. And as soon as we make the next one available, we will light that, but the whole county won't be done until we finish all of our last mile construction. Chris, we can go to the next slide. Here is a map. Again, another screenshot we provide at every update so you can keep track of progress. The green lines here are the miles of fiber, either in the air or underground, that we have constructed. And orange, those are the miles that are under construction today. They could have been released to construction 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago. They're in some stage of being constructed or being inspected. And it may be a little hard to tell, but kind of in the center of the county, there's 2 sections in yellow. That is where we're waiting for all of the permits to be approved. If you compare this to the update we gave earlier in February, or even back in October, a lot more lines are green now. The one category of lines that we don't put on here that would kind of overwhelm the map is we don't map the drop from the last mile fiber to the individual homes. Those are done on a one-off basis. But right here, this is our last mile fiber construction. It also doesn't include the 85 or so miles that Dominion has built. They present their miles separately on their own. So Chris, we can go to the next slide. Here are the 6 different fiber service areas in the county. King 3 up in the top right there, that's green. That is where folks in our project can sign up and get service today. We move to the west, King 2. That is right now released to marketing. It's not released to sales yet in terms of turning on service, but that is going to be the next fiber service area that we light. The remaining ones will come in the next month or 2. And as soon as we get the permits from Dominion, we're going to put the construction package together, release it to construction. But we can't sell the actual broadband service. We can't provide that redundancy until we have network complete in each individual fiber service area. So right now it's only King 3. The next one up is going to be King 2. We try to give people 60 or 90 days advance notice, but if there's good news from the networking team that we can turn on a fiber service area, we're not going to arbitrarily wait just to give homeowners more notice. We're going to get that good news out as soon as we can. We can go to the next slide, Chris. I got 2 slides in here, mainly information for you all to keep in your back pocket if asked. There was a Federal Infrastructure Act that has allocated $1.5 billion of funding to Virginia to capture any folks who slipped through the cracks in the previous funding for rural broadband. This has typically happened for 2 reasons. One, a couple of years ago, the Federal Communications Commission required that broadband providers, so in the county it would be BreezeLine, it used to be called Atlantic Broadband, they report service on a census block by census block basis. And there's a lot of folks that could be in a quote served census block that actually can't get service, and they would have been blocked from any kind of subsidy or funding from a company like Allpoints or Dominion in the past. Now, in the last year, it has changed. All of the service is reported on a location by location basis. So people who, as much as they screamed and yelled and said, we are unserved, it didn't matter if they were in a census block that precluded them from funding. The second category and reason why we see some homes now eligible for funding is that 2 or 3 years ago, the definition of broadband was much lower. So if you could get what is called DSL internet 3 years ago, you were not considered eligible for funding. But now the FCC has raised the speed level to define broadband. And so that captures a whole new group of folks who are eligible for funding. And that is why there may be some locations in the county that were not part of our original Virginia Telecommunications grant and would be eligible for BEAD. A lot of the same principles apply. The most efficient with tax dollars wins. And there is some portion of the funding score that is determined by the county. So there's a lot of locality input. All Points participated in what is called a challenge process to make the maps of broadband more accurate across the state. We were responsible for more than half of the challenges that were accepted by the Department of Housing and Community Development. I would say we did not make many friends in the incumbent cable industry because we submitted a lot of claims of serviceability, including in King George. So we hope to have the results of that. The whole statewide results should be available by the end of this quarter. We'll follow up with the county if there's any implications there, but this slide and the next are just some bullet points about the BEAD program. But I want to reiterate that our focus is the BOD grant that we have right now that we're carrying out on a regional basis on the Northern Neck and in King George. And we've got some great news. We got customers lit. There are over 100 people right now in King 3 that get internet because of this at a great investment from the county, from All Points, from the state. It's been a lot of work to get to where we are. I think there were some things and lessons learned along the way, but we're very, very close and made a lot of progress. So certainly proud of the success that we've had to date. Looking forward to providing this utility for years to come. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, board members, Mr. Sullins.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I've got a couple questions. I think you kind of touched on one of those. Ms. Bender, I apologize. Maybe you got the guy's last name, Kyle, the one that was reaching out to us. His home was built in the 1800s, but basically he's roughly 200 yards from the end of a breeze line drop. But Mr. Ennis, when he reached out to you guys, you told him he was covered by breeze line. Breeze line obviously doesn't cover him, and they want $14,000 to run 200 yards worth of line to get down to him. So he would like some relief. The other is one of the residents in the county reached out to me and said that the cable that goes across his land, it's so low that he often mows underneath the power lines in the cable area where you drop, where you guys put the cable up. He mows that so that the Northern Neck Electric Co-op folks don't have to do that. But the APB line is so low, hanging so low to the ground, he can't get his tractor under it to mow anymore. So he's wondering if you guys are going to maybe tighten that up and get it up out of the way.
Do you have an address there, or could I follow up with you about that? I mean, those kinds of things we need to address quickly if they're not already in a ticket right now.
Yes, sir. I can give you his address, or just give me a call later. I don't necessarily want to throw this out there across for all the world to hear, but if you can give me a call, my number is 540. Actually, you got a pencil?
Yes.
All right, 540-684-2500.
I'll give you a call and we can talk about both of those scenarios.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Yes, Mr. Ennis, as you might have seen, I've sent you one. Somebody actually is watching online and sent me their address. So I've sent another name to you. So just look out for that. And I'll look up the Mr. Solons, what he was talking about, that address, and send it, because that'll be a fourth person that I got information from. But I do want to thank you. We did have a farmer that had an issue with where you laid some lines, and you did take care of that in a very timely manner and fix that. So I want to thank you, and for the farmer that you did correct that for. But one of the things I want to reiterate, this is what we've been talking about for a while, is the breeze line monopoly. And that has frustrated me for no end, because I'm one of those people in that they can claim in a census block. I have Starlink now, so I'm okay. But it is frustrating because there's a lot of folks, especially in Shiloh, that they can't pay that cost of entry fee. I mean, down my road, which is a mile, we were quoted like $50,000 to lay a line down. That's ridiculous. And I wanted to ask the chair if maybe at the next meeting or in a couple of meetings, Breeze Line come, because we've had quite a few customer complaints about Breeze Line, and I think they have a cable franchise agreement with us. They need to come and let us ask them some tough questions about honoring that cable franchise agreement and making sure that they provide service, a better service than they're providing.
Ms. Fish, can you please put that on the agenda?
Thank you.
So, Mr. Ennis, so we seem to get a lot of complaints in regards to literally things are 15, 20 feet from the line, but they can't get service. And then the other complaint that we hear often is the customer service, as they constantly reach out to all points, and they either get the runaround or they get nothing. So we're asking you to tighten up on that and help our folks.
Yes, sir. Understood. The overwhelming majority of people who have a cable going by their property, and we tell them right now that they can't sign up, it is because they could, if they wanted to, they could get service from another provider, and we can't use and aren't going to use subsidy dollars to provide service to those folks. And as soon as we close out the grant award, we're building a state-of-the-art fiber optic network, and there's a lot of capacity in there for folks who aren't technically part of the BOD grant award. And I hear you on the customer service support side. We try to address everyone's concerns. It is incredibly frustrating to be a homeowner and get a bill from a provider that says it's $14,000, and then you hear that All Points is here and it's $99, and then you can't actually sign up for that. I hear you. I know that it's frustrating, but our focus is on the exact locations in the grant, and then we will get to the folks who could have an alternative broadband provider today. We will get to them as soon as we can.
Okay, Ms. Bender?
Yes, we have one of those folks in the office, Mr. Norris, and I talked to his mother-in-law today, and they were lying lines to her house, and I know their house is not that old, so I don't know, I don't understand in a couple of situations for the areas where the Breeze Line does not service, but because their house was built when after the maps, I don't understand why they can't get service, because that just doesn't make sense, especially with Mr. Norris and the lines being run through his driveway. So I really would like you to look into that, because that really doesn't make sense.
Well, if the home was built after the grant award, it wouldn't have had the opportunity to go through the formal challenge process. But I'm happy to look at that address again in more detail for you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Could you give us a response to our county emails on that particular situation so we know that it gets followed through on?
Yes, sir.
There's another question. Wait a minute.
Mr. Chair, our next scheduled dates are March 5th or 19th. So if Mr. Ennis could let us know so the public can come to one of those, since we're live, if you can come to the March 5th or 19th meeting.
I will check and get back to you, Ms. Fish.
Okay, thank you. All righty.
Thank you all.
0225, Ms. Puckett.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm before you this evening to request an update to the temporary landfill policy. I have included a sample in the agenda packet for you to look at. This update would grant the Commissioner of Revenue Office authority to issue and sign the temporary pass. Currently, it's all under the administrator. My office currently distributes the permanent landfill convenience center decals, and there should not be any reason why I would not have authority to sign the temporary pass.
Okay, so the requested action is for you to sign the temporary pass.
I redid the whole form for you to review
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that
It's in the packet.
everything would be under my authority.
Okay. Board members?
Mr. Chair, I have no problem. I'm the one who recommended meeting with Ms. Puckett that it needed to come before the board so we can vote on it. So it's a more efficient policy to make sure the public knows where to go. And Ms. Puckett has all the authority to do what she needs to do to give that pass out.
Do you have a motion?
I will make a motion to adopt the landfill convenience center temporary landfill pass policy as presented.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Puckett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
These other items on here, would you like to address?
Yes. The 26, are you talking about? The next one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I am also here this evening to request direction to move forward with the Reassessment Advisory Committee and the process of upcoming real estate reassessment. I have reviewed the 4 applications and consider each one of the applicants to be an asset to the committee.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion. I make a motion to accept all the applicants for the reassessment committee board as presented in the packet.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Bender, could you, just for the record, could you state the folks?
Yes, I can. List of applicants for nomination by the Board of Supervisors for the reassessment committee board are Mr. Bob Baird, real estate, Mr. John Cheadle, real estate, Mr. Miles Hastings, agricultural farmer, Mr. Dean Hoagland, agriculture, real estate, and finance, Ms. Stacy Wood, real estate technician 2, COR, Ms. Amy Southall, communication and community engagement coordinator, administration, facility, and manager of the RCB is Ms. Regina Puckett, COR. And what does COR stand for?
Commissioner of the Revenue.
All right, I just wanted to make sure. Too many acronyms.
All righty. Is there a second?
Second.
Properly second. Just one clarification for me, the chairman. So Ms. Southall doesn't have voting authority, is that correct?
It's just an advisory. She's going to be on that just so we make sure we we let the public know exactly what is happening.
All righty. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Nick Minor, 2027. TAC Wilmot Landing Parking Lot Extension. I see it's listed as an action item, but this is a first call. So it should be on discussion, really.
That's right. You guys did change the approval order for funding. Forgot about that. That's okay.
So we'll have this for discussion tonight. Go ahead.
Right. So, and I'm also going to give you guys a really quick presentation on TAC funding just for the new board members, just as a quick refresher. So when Mr. Dines gets that up, I'll go through that. It's not going to be under the agenda, Chris. It's going to be in your email. It should be at the top. I didn't have an attachment. Yeah, it should come in as an attachment, the PowerPoint. Exit out of that and then expand that. Go back up. You had the right there. There it is right there. Tourism Fund Overview. To the right hand side. I don't remember it being 15 slides, but Thanks, Nick. Yep, so I'll go through this really quick. Thank you, Mr. Dons. Really quick, the Tourism Fund, the King George County Tourism Advisory Committee was created to advise the Board of Supervisors on matters of enhancing tourism and tourism-related activities and to make recommendations to the board regarding the use of tourism designated funds. The TAC is advisory in nature and has no power to declare or establish policy. Revenues are generated by the hotel occupancy tax is roughly 5% for King George County. Localities keep 2.5 or half of that. And it must be spent on tourism-related activities or initiatives. Current vacancies, and we discussed this earlier in the meeting, the civic organizations, and then also lodging here. So in order to spend this money, it has to be reviewed by an advisory committee of the community. And these are the designated roles that we established during the tourism strategic plan. So marketing, promotion, culture and history, outdoor rec, agritourism, arts and events. So the application process, it is now an online application that they submit through the county website. And that should be in your packet as you see what it looks like there. It used to be all paper written. But essentially what we've done is establish that any application that comes before us, it needs to be done, it needs to come before 3 months before the event to at least give proper time to advertise that event. These applications can take anywhere between a month to a month and a half to get through. That's in front of the advisory committee and then to the board. And now we probably need a little bit more time since we're going to be doing things on a second reading as far as funding applications. Trying to think what else I need to put on or go over here with you. So again, these applications come before the board. The advisory committee will make a vote. Staff will also have its own recommendation as it pertains to the TAC application, but the board makes final decision on how that money is spent, how much of that money is spent. So you'll see applications come before you probably at the next meeting as well. What we've done is pretty much as a rule of thumb is that we're looking at anywhere between $15,000 applications and basically capping them right there. You can go higher, but I'll show you why we're capping. So the current tourism fund balance is about $735,179 in there. We budget about $154,000. $20,000 of that budget goes to advertising, and then the other $64,000 goes towards grants. So the majority of the TAC applications we get are for events. Like the application I'm gonna go over with you after this presentation is for an initiative. We can use them to do, like we've used it to do feasibility studies or even engineering studies for potential expansion of the museum. We just look at to use things to enhance the tourism activity in the county just overall. So I believe that's it. Yep, that's it. You can close out the application, Chris. And I'll just jump right into the board report. The Department of Economic Development and Tourism and the Tourism Advisory Committee are coordinating a potential expansion of Wilmot Landing parking lot on the property owned by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service at Toby's Point, Virginia. The purpose of the parking lot is to provide increased access to the county-owned boat landing located at Toby's Point, also known as Wilmot Landing, to assist Fish and Wildlife Services with its responsibilities under Section 106 of the National Historical Preservation Act. The Department and King George County Tourism Advisory Committee are requesting funds from the Tourism Fund for these services. TAC recommendations after review, TAC recommends that the board approve $26,000 to conduct 1, a field study, 2, historical research, 3, archaeological dig, and 4, MOU preparation with Fish and Wildlife. Staff agrees with TAC's recommendations. And with that, I'll take questions from the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Any questions? Mr. Sullins?
Can you give us a breakdown on why this costs so much? $26,000 for those 4 items seems a little bit over the top.
Sir, I do not have an answer to that question. This was prepared by the experts of St. Mary's University, so I couldn't answer those questions as to why it costs so much.
Gotcha.
I do have a draft report where they break down everything they're going to do for the county, but I'm just providing a summary to the board at this time.
Gotcha. You mind emailing that to us if you could? please?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. The other question is for the boat landing. Do we charge you for use of that?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So what's in it for the county to expand this? I mean, we heard earlier that we see a lot of vehicles from out of state coming and using this facility. What's in it for the county if we do this?
So again, I'm making this a tourism initiative because we are going to try to increase visitorship to the county who want to get access to that boat landing or get access to the Rappahannock River. So if we increase the parking, there's potential to have, more fishermen that are out of state. We advertise this county as an outdoor recreational tourism destination. So, but we lack the access to the river that we need in order to be that. So this is a part of that tourism strategic plan, the economic development strategic plan that we place forward in trying to increase access to waterfront property that the county has and very unique to other localities within the region.
Okay. Is it near restaurants, businesses that might be frequented because they're coming to it?
No, I would say the closest business is Back Porch, which is on that road, blanking on, I guess it is Wilmot Landing Road. But they would have to drive past these other businesses in order to use that landing.
Okay.
There isn't anything close by necessarily speaking that could potentially benefit.
But they do pass businesses
Exactly,
going and coming.
absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, given where it is, you would have to drive by numerous businesses in order to get access to it.
Mr. Stroud?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Mr. Minor, are you familiar with the other landings, access points to the Rappahannock?
The only one that I'm familiar with the only one that exists is the state hop yard landing that has access to the Rappahannock.
So, are you familiar with the cost with using the other landings?
There's no cost to using those landings. Hop yard is also public.
Okay, so hop yard is, but the other landings and access, there is a cost where they charge, whether they're on the other side of the river or the other landings, there's a cost. So
Okay.
I think that it's worth looking at us charging. I mean, it's drawing people, but I use the other landings and I pay to use those landings.
Yes, sir.
And if I'm going to pay to use those landings, I really don't mind paying and using a landing that's closer to me to use it. And they do draw. I mean, it saves you from driving additional miles on your vehicle to land. And some of the existing landings, they get really full. So it's hard to park your boat, your trailer,
Yep.
and stuff. So if we provide that additional expansion and the ability of people to do that, they're more than willing to pay a fee because they're paying everywhere else anyway. So if you're providing them the accessibility and access, then especially if it's made smartly, then people are going to mind paying, and that'll help recoup some costs. Because the next thing is going to be the cost to build it, right?
Correct. Right.
So that would help. And to kind of caveat on Mr. Sullivan's question regarding the cost breakdown, I had the same question, but I was wondering, I guess the same thing, how the cost at $26,000, it seemed like a lot of money. I was curious to how they were broken down. So maybe that answer will come whenever you.
So I do have a breakdown for you, Mr. Stroud and Mr. Sullins. I apologize. I thought it was in the application. If it's not in the application, I can give you a quick breakdown. So background and research / field work is let's just say it this way, $9,743. The analysis that the university is providing is $5,702. The report is $6,653. There are DHR box fees. The DHR box fees are actually to collect any artifacts that are found at the site. Each box fee is about $350. So they don't think they're going to need two, but that's what the cost is for 2 boxes. If they don't need it, they'll give it back. And then the other portion of it is housing, $3,200 is what they've also included in their proposal to the county. I'm trying to think of what else they included in here. And a little bit of that is also for overhead. So that's what they broke down in the proposal for us.
Ms. Bender?
So I'm going to be honest, I'm not for this because we have somebody in the audience who probably could give us the history for free and not $9,373, and people at the Historical Society. I mean, I've learned quite a bit from Elizabeth Lee, but I know there's other, including Mr. Calvinors here can probably, and Mr. Baird, who could probably give us a lot of the history without having to pay $9,000 for that. And housing and all that, I just think this is a waste of money, to be honest, from the TAC fee, because we have a lot of people locally that could give that answer. Is this required by DHR? I mean, why? And then I'm going to give another one out here. I was very disappointed in how we kind of gave away the artifacts from Barnesfield Wayside Park. I would want to make sure that whatever artifacts are collected stay in King George County. And I'm kind of disappointed that nobody that lives on Wilmot Landing was actually consulted about this, because I've been down there. It's not a big landing. I don't know if you've ever been down there, Mr. Stroud. It's not really for big boat access. So I kind of not for charging. It's been a nice area where local residents can come and fish and launch their small boats. I mean, I've been down there a couple times, a beautiful place. The only reason, to be honest, I haven't been down there very many times is because I kind of feel nervous as a lady down there by myself, because it is a very isolated area, but a beautiful area, especially if you want to bring a group of people. But I just think this is a waste of money when we have a lot of local residents that could probably do this for free.
Ms. Bender, can I give you a quick response to what you just proposed? So Julia A. King will serve as the principal investigator and work on the project at no charge to King George County or the Fish and Wildlife Service. Ms. King meets the Secretary of Interior standards for archaeological investigations, which I think may be the requirement if you're going to provide a resource survey. So why we hire her? One, for her expertise. She's done work in King George County and the Northern Neck. She's done projects like this for Fish and Wildlife before and Southern Maryland. And then I think she rose her hand to help us on this project. Obviously, she's doing it free of cost. So the things that they want us to cover are essentially their overhead to do the site work for this project, I think is what she's proposing to the county. So that's I'm reading directly from the report that she's provided the county, or the proposal that she's provided the county. So.
And that's why I was asking, is this required to do this from the Fish and Wildlife Service?
So when you disturb land of any kind, especially something that may have historical significance, a resource study like this is almost always required.
Okay, I know Mr. Baird has told me a lot about this. This is a very historic site, so I just,
this
seems a lot of money.
It's just a study. It's nothing that's going to disturb the site. It's just making sure that we don't do anything that disturbs anything of historical significance. But
all right, thank you.
Set the will of the board. So.
All right, thank you. Well, Ms. Fish, can you put this on the agenda? Thank you. Did you have another question, sir?
Well, sir, I was just sorry. Just to caveat on what Ms. Bender was saying, I think you're talking about the historical site. This is what Mr. Lewis spoke about earlier, and I think he was against this expansion. Is that correct? Yeah. Mr. Norris. Oh, Norris. Sorry, I had the name wrong. Okay, thanks, sir.
Okay. Wait, one more question. Go ahead, sir.
With the location where it is, I mean, he was saying most people come from out of town to utilize it. You find it probably where those people coming from, I would be thinking most of them are coming from the Northern Neck, from Westmoreland, that area, and coming down. So they're missing all of our businesses. They're eating in Montrose and all that stuff and gassing up or wherever they're doing on the way down. I don't know. That's what I would assume. That's where the majority of them are coming from.
Yeah, I'm not tracking, and maybe that's a better question for Mr. Clark, right? Like even adding those fees to something like that, that's something that's going to have to be discussed with Parks and Rec and their Parks and Rec advisory committee. What I'm looking at is just an overall big picture of why this works for the tourism side of things, why this works for people to come visit the county. As far as how we execute it, who pays for it, this is one way to pay for it. The other way to pay for it would be either to put it in Parks and Rec's budget, or the board could, obviously allocate money in another way in order to do this project, or we could go after grant funding for a project like this where we're not using any funds from the county coffers. But this is just one way to pay for something like this. I thought because it did align with the tourism strategic plan, economic development strategic plan, I thought that it would be a good use of tourism funding. So that's my 2 cents.
And I would think too, like if we're creating a tourist location, if we're going to do anything there, it would be more of establishing where foundations were on buildings that were there and putting plaques up and things like that. I mean, if you want people to if we're looking at from that perspective.
We do a study like this and we find something that has historical significance, whether we expand the parking lot or not, I don't see why we don't use that history and showcase it down there on the property. So
Thank you.
yes, sir.
So is that just the parking lot then? It doesn't include the ramp and that?
This is just expansion of the parking lot. It does not expand the ramp.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Clark. Well, maybe, would you be willing to come to the next meeting when we? Thank you so much. Alrighty, so 228 will be Ms. Dillard, Department of Finance, Procurement, Professional Services Agreement for a new fire station. How you do, ma'am?
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the board. In November 2023, proposals were received from 7 firms in response to RFP 1109-2023-14 for professional architectural services to include design, construction administration services, site planning, and geotechnical studies associated with the new fire station. The proposals were evaluated by a selection committee consisting of Chief Moody, Deputy Chief Basham, Captain Deputy Lynn, Mr. Bryce Young, and Mr. Travis Quisenberry. Based on the proposals and interviews with the 3 highest ranked firms, the selection committee ranked Mosley Architects as the most qualified firm for this project and commenced negotiating a scope of services and fees. Negotiations were completed in January 2024. The project consists of professional design and construction administration services associated with the design and construction of the new fire rescue station of approximately 16,000 square feet. The new fire station will be located on approximately 3.15 acres of county-owned land located on Windsor Drive, adjacent to the Oakland Baptist Church. Total project budget should not exceed $14 million. The attached proposals that provide detailed scopes of work and fee breakdowns are in your board packet. The project will be delivered using a construction manager at risk delivery method and constructed under a single stipulated sum construction contract pursuant to solicitation of contractors through the request of the proposal competitive negotiation process. I am asking you, Mr. Chair, to authorize the county to take the following actions. Transfer $1.142,420,000 from the construction line of the firehouse preschool bond GL 4-302-094 144-8212 to the engineering line for the firehouse GL-4-302-09145-3140 and execute a professional service agreement with Mosley Architects in the amount of $1,142,420 for professional architectural, engineering, and construction administrative services associated with the new fire station, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney. You have any questions?
$1.24 million to design the fire station.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Bender?
Yes, before I say that, this is your first presentation, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Thank you.
And I love to hear construction manager at risk because that's what we did for the courthouse. And I think that was an awesome way to do it. But I'm going to say, so moved.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before you made a motion? So the motion, is it properly second? Well, you have a question or you want to go? Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. I see there's a cost in here for training, a training tower. This may not be the time to ask the question. If not, feel free to push back. Are we working with other counties to allow them to come and use this and maybe recoup some of the cost of this?
That would be a question for Chief Moody.
Okay.
So I'll ask Chief Moody to answer that question for you.
Good evening. Answer is no. So the original cost estimate was around $300,000. What this is we lowered the budget so we could mirror what we had at Company One. So this is not a training tower that we would be doing any live fire training inside. Essentially be a ladder, ladder tower, Mayday tower, et cetera, just like we have at Company. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Thank you. Mr. Stroud,
Thanks, sir.
you're experienced in these building projects, is 1.242 million. Doesn't that seem like a lot of money for that?
Well, I couldn't answer that now, sir. Looking at this, it would take time to go through. I think you said you had solicited out bids, and this was the
Proposals. We solicited proposals, and out of the 7, we chose the top 3. Actually, the selection committee chose the top 3. Those top 3 firms came in and did oral presentations on the fire station architecture design for us. And out of those 3, Mosley ranked the highest.
okay. So how did you choose the top 3? Was it based on the lowest price?
No, there was some evaluation criteria that each of these firms had to meet. And the selection committee actually ranked them based on their proposals as to who came in at the top.
I'm new to this, so I'm just curious if any of you guys looked at any of that criteria. Did any of the supervisors see any of the criteria?
Could we, Mr. Rosavi, you're experienced in these items. Could you weigh in on this, sir?
Well, I would need some further information. I've been reading a lot of different things, but I would need to see the request for proposal and what the submissions were before I could really tell you.
Okay, well, if the motion fails, then we can do that. Right now, the motion's on the table. Is there any further questions for Ms. Holland or Ms. Laverne?
If I could, just explain a little bit about the RFP process. In that RFP, there are qualifications listed, and each one of them has a point score next to it, and those scores add up to 100. And then each individual reviewer or committee member will rank each one, will score it. They read the proposal, they look at those qualifications, and they score it. Mr. Travis Kusenberry, who has been with the county for a long time, is county engineer for years. He and Mr. Bryce Young worked on that solicitation to be put out and worked on those qualifications that were put in that solicitation. It goes out on EVA, like Ms. Dillard mentioned, for a set period of time to solicit any proposals that come in from that.
Thank you, ma'am. I know we can't break all this down. I just saw in their underground utility location survey, and I'm like, a lot of times you call them, they come out and do that for free. So, but, thank you for the explanation of how that works, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Good, you did a good job.
Mr. Davis, you had a question?
I just according to how we're kind of doing things, I don't remember this ever coming up as a discussion item. It's on us today for as an action.
So it was determined that if something was already approved in the CIP process, that it didn't have to come for discussion because this project was discussed during CIP. And I understand that 3 of the 5 of you were not a part of that last year, but this was discussed at a public hearing last March. And then again in the CIP budget work sessions. So it has been heavily discussed, and it was our understanding that a contract that comes out of the CIP process does not have to have a discussion that we can go right into an action item.
Ms. Bindle, would you like to table your motion until the three can get more information?
I just have one question before I table a motion. I know there's some discussion and the price tag is the sticker shock. Is how much Ms. Hahn, do you know how much off the top of your head the courthouse architecture, because it was the same firm?
It was more than this because the building is larger.
Okay.
I don't know the exact dollar amount, but it was larger. And I do know that I believe when it first came, the first proposal came, that's what Ms. Dillard mentioned, is that we did negotiate the price down from the original proposal amount.
And Mosley is very familiar with construction manager at risk, and it's been a very successful process. But one other question concerning this, is this time sensitive for the RFP to award it, and that, is it time sensitive? Can it be tabled to the next meeting without any issues? Okay, so I'll withdraw my motion then.
And if you'd like, we can send out to all of the board members the RFP that went out, and that would have the qualifications in it.
Thank you. Mr. Stroud, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. I'm curious on the cost. So like, whenever I go shopping to buy something, there's the, can of beans that costs $2 and a can that costs $1.50. And I have to determine if I have enough money to get the can of beans that costs $2 or if I just want to live with $1.50. So whenever these solicitations or the responses came back and you're looking at the cost, they may have been the best, they may have been ranked the highest, but I'm curious about, the cost savings here if we went with the number 2, like how much would we save and that kind of thing.
So the way that the process works is that you start the negotiation with the top ranked firm. Either you accept their proposal and move on, or you toss it out. Once you go to the second person and start negotiating costs, if that cost comes in at a higher dollar amount, you cannot go back to the first firm. That's the way the process works in the Commonwealth of Virginia for government.
So the motion's, she's pulling it, she's tabling it. You want more questions, Mr. Stillings? Go ahead.
So we're not allowed to talk about costs until we've picked somebody?
So in this process, it was a request for proposals as to the design. And in most of your RFPs, you do not ask for a cost proposal upfront because it's all the intricate details once you get into the negotiation phase. So yes, once you don't get a cost proposal up front, you pick the firm that you want to do your design, and then you start negotiating with them on that cost.
Mr. Savi?
What she said is correct. In any professional services, they can voluntarily disclose a cost estimate, but that does not hold them to that until you do a contract. Now, if you had an architect design this facility and then put it out to bids, then you would have specific bids for comparison purposes.
Okay, alrighty. Thank you all. Alrighty, next thing is, I know you all had a first reading of the general properties lease renewal, and that's Mr. Stewart's. I wasn't here. I'd like to make a comment in regards to that, and then when Mr. Stewart represents it, but I just wanted something maybe for you all to think about on this particular item. So the general properties building over by the dump is being leased right now. And in the CIP, we're going to move it over to the courthouse. And so we don't have that building yet. But if you all recall, the school bus garage actually is owned by the county. And there was one bay that was supposed to be general properties back in the day that for some reason, I don't know why general properties didn't take that bay. But there is also plenty of room at the service authority buildings, at least for a temporary thing, instead of getting into another lease for a year. that's just some information that I'd like for y'all to think about.
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify on the Service Authority property. There is enough property there, but there is currently, I don't think, a building that is properly able to house maintenance safely. Let's just say there's extra building for that. There's just enough for the Service Authority. You would have to do some things there to make it be able to. And there's an issue with pulling, and I have to say, I pulled out today and I saw the issue is getting out of there. It can be a little dicey, especially at this, during the daytime when we have heavy traffic because of especially if you want to turn left. But its location could be a little dicey.
So I would suggest that the other three members go look at the Service Authority area and look at the general properties that we have now. I've been in there. It looks like there's plenty of room for the general properties, in my opinion. But I would suggest that you three take a look at both those facilities and determine that on your own. Alrighty, so we've come to the end of the line now since Mr. Stewart's not here. Is there any other? Oh, 23?
Yep.
Okay, sorry. 23. 33? 33. I'm sorry, Mr. Stewart.
No worries at all, Mr. Chairman.
0233, appointment of CPMT team members for the King George County CBA. Could you tell us what those acronyms mean first?
That was actually not my action item. I had the Hop Yard sections 4, 5, and 6 acceptance. That was
Okay.
number 29 after Laverne's.
So whose is 33?
I think that's just an appointment. We just make a motion to appoint.
Okay, does anybody know what the CPMT is?
Community Policy and Management Team.
Okay. And who are those people? Sorry.
Usually there's somebody representing the schools, and I forget all. Ms. Hahn can probably give us a little bit.
So this is a first reading on that one too. So can we come back with that so we know who the people are and so forth? Okay, Mr. Stewart, go ahead and do yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, tonight I have 4 requests before you to convey the subdivision streets in Hop Yard section 4, 5, 6, and 7 into the secondary system of state highways. That is Weems Drive, Ithaca Court, Leedstown Road, Longbow Road, Brassica Lane, Colonial Drive, and Spinnaker Lane. It's totaling about 1.85 miles. If you're coming off of Route 3 on Port Conway, this is your first turn on the right. You start right there at the entrance in Weems Drive, going through that section. It's the cul-de-sacs on either side until you hit the existing section 2, which has the clubhouse on it. Those are already in the state maintained system. So these have gone through the review of the Community Development Office. They have been constructed. Their engineers have submitted as-builds to us, assuring us that they were constructed in accordance, and they have gone through VDOT's SSR review. And therefore, the Department of Community Development staff recommends that the Board of Supervisors adopt the secondary road addition for Hop Yard section 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I'd be happy to take any questions you may have.
Are there any questions? No questions? Move forward with this.
I'll make a motion for VDOT acceptance of Hop Yard sections 4, 5, 6, and 7.
Second.
Properly second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
All right, we'll try one more time. The discussion items. Anything? Already. Secondary public comment. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. Please provide your full name, district when submitting your public comment so that it can be properly included in the public record. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment? Mr. Norris.
Good evening, board. I'm Jason Norris, 7077 Indiantown Road. I'm in the James Monroe district. I came to talk about the broadband, but I think y'all nailed that coffin enough for me this evening, so I won't waste my time there. But I want to talk about the Wilmont Landing. I grew up off of Wilmont Road. I have a boat. I've put it in there multiple times. I'm for expanding that parking lot. Okay, the study for the artifacts historical study, that's a great idea. There's a lot of history there. I grew up learning about it. I know a lot myself from my father. But what we need to look about is 500 yards past his driveway is a steep hill. You can't pass 2 trucks and 2 boats on that road, and it's a blind hill. It is an accident waiting to happen. So if we're gonna do it, we gotta make sure we're forward thinking and planning ahead on things like that. If we're gonna bring in more tourism, more vehicles on that road, we gotta make it safe. My kids, his grandkids play right there in that area. So that's all I really wanna say is we gotta really make sure we're thinking about it. And as far as the charging to use the ramp, it's a free ramp. County and out-of-staters use it all the time. I've been down there multiple times. I talked to the last board. I haven't been able to even park my trailer down there to use a county-funded ramp. My tax dollars pay for that ramp and the maintenance down there. But I can't use it because of out-of-staters and out-of-countyers. So, yeah, bring in the tourism, but what's in it for the county if I can't use it? My tax dollars pay for it. If I can't use it and park my truck down there to where I gotta call my father to come grab my truck and go park it on his property to drive me back down there, that's an issue for county citizens. So if we're gonna look at expanding a county ramp, make sure the citizens that are paying for it, the use of it, the maintenance of it, can use it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Mr. Morris Senior. I'm sorry, I said Morris, I meant Norris.
We all know who you're talking about, the big fat gray hair guy. I'm with my son Jason. I'm not really opposed of expanding it, but you're going to open up a can of worms. Again, traffic is going to be one of them. One of our board members, I believe it may have been Mr. Solids, who said, where's this tourism coming from? And the mention was, well, you got back porch right up the road. Well, that's a winery, yeah. It's about 1.5 miles from the end of the road. If somebody comes in there, breaks down, has an emergency problem, you can't hardly get emergency vehicles down there. Chief Moody's gone, I believe. He's not here. But what if you put an ambulance and another vehicle at this one hill that my son's claiming, which is 500 yards past my driveway? You're creating a disaster there. Not to mention, Mr. Stroud, you said you used the other ones across the river. I assume you're talking like Hicks Landings and so on and so forth. Nice places, and they are. Do they have any restroom facilities over there? Outhouses, perhaps?
I think it's in Porta John.
Are they ADA compliant?
So wait a minute, we're not going to get into question answer.
I'm just throwing that out.
Please continue your comments,
Which
sir.
is what you're going to be opening up to. A whole bunch of different things of that nature. The highway department, they have a heck of a time just trying to maintain the roads. The ditches haven't been pulled on them roads in years for one reason or another. I would suggest that 3 board members, or even you, Mr. Collins, I don't know if you've ever been down there, the 4 of you, go down and take a look at it. See if that is the best practice, the best place to put our money for something like that. I don't know. If it's an archaeological study down there and we find Native American artifacts, which were found, if I'm not mistaken, here recently, just about a 1/2 mile from this location on another farm on a road adjacent to this one by a study done by St. Mary's County of Maryland, St. Mary's University. What are we going to do then? Were we the only place to put this so-called parking lot improvement is at the top of the hill? How are people going to get down to their boat ramps? Are you going to improve it? You're going to make it easier? Are you going to tear down Paradise and put up a parking lot? That's what it kind of looks like to me.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Ms. Level?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Ana Maria Lobo, and I live in Presidential Lakes.
I want to thank all of you for your service, and I hope that you make the good decisions for the county since you are part of the community. Also, I want you to remember when you do the budget that you should be very careful with what you spend. Stop building things and pay the bills. The Service Authority owes over $40 million, and the county owes $120 million. I will also like to know what happened. This is for Mrs. Bender, because you were last year in here in 2000 or 2 years ago. I would also like to know what happened with the broadband. The last supervisors gave you $600,000. Mrs. Kapka requested many times that they come to one of these meetings and tell us where they are with their work, but they never show up. That is true or not? Mrs. Kapka asked these people that tonight supposed to be here, but he didn't. I understand the county has agreed to give it give it to another, but I think I hear wrong. They want to give it another $150,000. I think that we should pay them when the work is finished. I understand that Congress Rob Whitman was working to get a grant for the broadband project. I see a lot of work being done on the side of the road, King George and King George. I hope this is installation of broadband. I understand some subdivisions in the county already had this broadband internet service. I will also like you to be very careful with the data center. Some people worry that there will be problems with the center using water and electricity. Many people think this center will bring many jobs, but I've been told that they do not need a lot of people for this operation. Amazon will probably bring their own operators to run the center. Amazon is working to make more money, not giving money away. Please try to do the best things for the county. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Mr. Dines, is there anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So we will close that secondary public comment. And is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, can I, couple items that.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
I didn't want to interrupt, but I know you talked about the broadband service from the cable company and that you have a franchise agreement. A franchise agreement only pertains to their video and so forth. It does not pertain to the broadband internet service.
Can we see the franchise agreement?
I assume that we have it here somewhere.
Yeah,
but it does not cover that. I'm not saying don't call them up here because all the counties in the Northern Neck have experienced what you've described. And a lot of the problems, we have subdivisions where they stop and there's like multiple homes and they want, as you mentioned, them to pay the capital cost to extend the service, which most people simply aren't going to do that. And so, but one of the things I didn't want to question, the last time we had a county administrators meeting, we did some serious questioning, and obviously sometimes they don't like the pressure of some of the questions you ask. But it was my understanding that that new information from the enumeration districts, there was going to be a new map put out, and that they could then apply for grant funds. I'm not sure if it was VADI or rural development. There's a number of ones that have funds to do that. And so it was my understanding at that time, what Mr. Carr and this gentleman said, that they would be looking at applying for those funds to try to serve some of those areas. So, but if you have particular areas like you've mentioned, there's a young lady who works for BreezeLine that I've worked with over the years who's been pretty effective in helping an attempt to try to resolve those. So maybe on the days that I'm here, if you, Commander, provide me that information, we'll see if we can reach out to her and get a response.
Thank you. Before the adjournment, so brought up the county administrator. So are the board members want to close that position? Because it goes to the end of the month. Is there any will for that?
Sure, I believe there's probably enough applicants right now, and we can put a schedule together, start holding interviews.
Sir, would you make a motion to close the application process?
Yes, sir. I would make a motion to close it. We can always open it back up if needed.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second, but I just want to make sure we have a process in place and an interview schedule. That's all.
Okay, so there's probably second. Any more discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. So that's closed. So now let's talk a little bit about the process. So I would suggest to the members, if you are willing to, everybody has the applicants or the that we received from personnel. If we would each individually go through those and pick out, it's up to the will of the board, 2 or 3 for possible interviews. And then we can have a closed meeting where we can put those names, for other words, in a bowl and pull them out and see what 2 or 3 come to the top so we can set up the interviews. Does anybody have an interest in that process?
Yes, I'm just from the person who was here the last time we did this is, maybe being able, maybe 5 names at first to put in the bowl might be a little, because we picked our last county administrator. It was 2021. It was right after the pandemic. We didn't have a lot of choices. So I want to make sure that we have enough choices to make a good decision. Because sometimes when you interview people, their resume might look great on paper, but when you actually meet them and interview them, you might get a different opinion. So I just want to make sure we have enough to look at maybe in the first go around and debate.
So there's a consensus, anybody for number? Mr. Sullins?
I was going to say, maybe I'm not understanding the process properly, but it sounds like we're kind of doing a lottery. If y'all are amenable to it, I will put together a spreadsheet, stick it in that folder that you're talking about. We can review the various resumes and give them a ranking 1 to 5, 1 to 10, whatever. The spreadsheet will automatically bubble up those that we all seem to have the most confidence in, and then we can make a kind of an educated guess on who we want to interview as opposed to pulling them out of a bowl.
Okay, so how many would be would you all be interested in, as in the bubbling up, the top 2, 3, 4?
I like 5.
I like 5.
Mr. Stroud, what's your number?
Well, the number, 5 is fine. If you have 6 good candidates, though, then there's nothing wrong with interviewing 6. And there's also nothing that says we have to select any of these.
That's correct.
So I think having a meeting that Ms. Fish could schedule a time for us to get together and just discuss the candidates and discuss some of our criteria would be a good thing.
So could we, would you agree that each of us independently pick 5? It seems to be the number.
I like Mr. Sullins. Yes, sir.
Okay. Mr. Davis, what is your view?
You're basically going to take 5 and you're going to rank your top 5 is the way I would think of it. Like, this is my number 1, this is my number 2, this is my number 3, this is my number 4, this is my number 5. You may have a different one, but my number 1 might be your number 2 type deal, and then take those people that that are kind of raising to the top 3 or 4 or 5 and using them, or set up interviews for them. Yeah.
So that's not exactly what the spreadsheet I was talking about would do. Basically, we would there'll be a list of names down the side. Our names would go across the top. We rank or score each and every person. And then the spreadsheet will total those out, and it will bubble up the top 5 among the 5 of us.
That's what we've done in the CIP.
So how many, you mean all the applicants you want to do, all of them?
Yeah.
And then,
Some of them are going to get a score of 0, so they're not. It doesn't matter.
so what's the number, 0 to what?
It's all the applicants, so they all are considered. If they apply, they should be considered. So they would be considered as a part of this process.
Yes, sir. But so you're saying that if I like applicant, whatever, and I put them at spot 1, down to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, all the way down to the end, is that what you're talking about?
I wasn't ranking them, I'm scoring them. So each one will get a score from 0 to 5 or 0 to 10 based on his or her qualifications and how much confidence we have in them. And then from that, it'll total up all of our numbers and then order them. And the top 5, whoever gets the most points, that's who or we could do what you say.
So you want to do 0 to 10?
Sure.
Yeah. 0 to 10?
Hmm?
0 to 10?
Yes, that's a nice idea.
And, okay, so we'll do that. And Mr. Sutherland, you'll create this sheet for us? And when will you have it to us? Tomorrow?
Sure. It'll be tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
I'm flying tomorrow.
That'd be great. And then the process after that,
Well, that's
we need to know what the results are, and then we need to start setting up what the numbers that we want to interview. So we can only do that we can go through Mr. Asabi, if that would work for you, sir. So then we don't have to have a meeting, we can just send it to him and it can float back to us. Would that work for everyone?
And Mr. Chair, the only thing I want to add in is that we start thinking of interview questions. The last time we did it, the 5 of us we each got 3 questions. So there was 15 questions and each one had the same question each time. So you were asking the same questions and the same person was asking the question.
Yeah, well, there's no doubt that you have to ask same questions to everyone. Mr. Asabi, we received some questions from the personnel director. Would you like to review those? And I know you have had some practice, that's why. Would you mind doing that task? Thank you. Is there anything else to come before the board at this time? Mr. Stroud?
Maybe we could, with Ms. Fisher's help, we could target some dates in the coming weeks that would be interview dates. That way we can start deconflicting our schedules of what we could do that. That way, as we select people, then we'd already have some dates and times available for them.
So would you all be interested in having daytime interviews? It seem to be the most reasonable, except for like Mr. Sullins, who has a job. Mr. Davis.
And Mr. Chair, we also have to have consideration. I mean, there were some candidates from out of state.
Right.
So we have to factor that into based on what the rankings were.
That's correct.
And Mr. Chair, if Mr. Stroud has a question, I have one appointment I forgot about.
Well, that brings a question. If you're talking about interviewing people from out of state, then is the county going to pay for them to come to the interview?
That's a very good question. That would have to be a decision of the board.
If we can find qualified candidates without paying for them to travel to come here, I'd much rather, have that.
Well, I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it and see who floats. Ms. Bender, you said you had something else, appointment?
Yes, and I just got to clarify with Ms. Fish first, just to get the exact name, because it just came, I forgot to appoint her the last time. Our FAMPO Citizens Transportation, what's the exact name of it? The Citizen Transportation Committee, or Mr. Clark probably can reel it right off for me.
Citizen Transportation Advisory Committee.
Thank you. I would like to appoint Ms. Denise Flatley to the FAMPO Citizen Advisory Committee.
I second that. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. All righty.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
You have an appointment on 0234 for.
Yes, I did that earlier. Mr. Paul Tucker to the LBFCA. I did that appointment during the discussion period. Is it-
28th will be our next meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to February 28th at 5:30 PM, in the Robert H. Combs Boardroom.
February 28th.
Yes.
It's next Wednesday.
Second.
Ma'am,
Is that correct? Yeah, that's correct. Go ahead.
I will be out of town that day, just
So
It's next Wednesday's budget.
next Wednesday's budget. Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Chair votes aye. Thank you.